Okay, thank you. So we open the meeting and we have Councillor Rankin as an apology for lateness, and Councillor Truman, I'm not too sure, and who we've got over here. Oh, Rachel's here. Yeah, cool. So, do we need a further? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Parks, and Councillor Williamson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Okay, Kendall, what have you got? What have you taken? What are we going to try?
So good morning, everyone. Today is our deliberations day. So today we'll be going through and making some decisions. What we have in this report and what you have heard and read in submissions. So the order of today, the agenda report has been set up, and hopefully we can work our way through each of those groups in that order, so that staff who I've asked to come along can be here as well to help with any points of clarification. So this morning we'll start with the discussion around the East Urban Lands, and then move on from there. At the end of the day, we'll pause for 15 minutes or so, just so that we can just finalise the resolutions that need to be adopted at the end of today, and optimism, goals, we'll get there. So yeah, that's pretty much the order of today. Given that there are some quite specific topics in here, so around the East Urban Lands and also the depreciation conversation, Philip King will come up and be here to walk you through the business case, and then be available to have any answer any questions of clarification through that. And Jeanette is here to assist with those questions around rating and depreciation as well. So yeah, I will ask Philip King to come up and present the business case, walk you through that. And
just for the housekeeping, so what time is lunch?
I love these really important questions. If we can aim to have lunch around 12:30, I'm not sure if there's any other timing in terms of catering or anything like that. Cool. Okay. Well, definitely, and we'll have a morning tea.
12 to 12:30.
Yeah, and we'll have a morning tea break as well. So, yes, no.
I'll keep you on.
Thank you.
What time is morning tea?
Well, it's 9:30 now. If we aim for a quick coffee bathroom break around 10:30.
When I can actually do a couple of the jobs.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So if we aim for around 10:30 for a quick 5-10 minute break around there, that'd be great.
Okay, lovely.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kendall. Really good.
Morning.
Morning, Philip. How are you? Nice to see you, Nicole. Nice to see you.
On with the red light.
Oh, is that a holiday home that we can use?
Yes, it is too. I've been there. It's a Waiheke Island.
Perhaps just while we're
Sandy.
tidying up the screen,
Julie. Yeah.
we're probably going to do deliberations in two parts. So today is about the major decisions that are included in the agenda report, and then we will come back separately to go through each of the submissions.
Yeah.
So there is a report to come out. Just to acknowledge the team have been working really hard to get the draft responses back to the submissions. So while we're just removing that, the screen, that's what the deliberations looks like. So the major decisions today.
Yeah, so we'd like to let Kiritea Pukawa submission. We'll discuss that when we go through the submission.
Yeah. Yes. So that
And some food source million inspections.
So we will go through
the submission summary report that will come out to you. I think we're aiming to get that to you tomorrow.
Oh.
We'll go through each of the submissions and give a draft response to those. And we'll do that, I think, probably next week. So you have a time in your diary Tuesday next week. And so we will aim to do each individual response.
Yeah. Which they got tomorrow.
We do, and we'll see how today goes whether we actually use it.
So today we'll discuss the main issue.
Correct, if that's okay.
Cool, perfect. Okay, Philip. Okay, good morning, Philip. How are you?
Good morning. I just talked to you about the EUL, the land that council owned 110 hectares of it sitting up, runs all through the back of Mitre 10 Mega right through to Korkamea Village and Naroto Estate, and where the Neil Group are currently doing some development. And there's 110 hectares that we've got left that hasn't been sold. In recent years, we've sold super lots to developers. The most recent one was to Neil Group, which is about a 10 hectare lot that we sold in 2018, but settled in 2021. And through the winter of 21 and 22, they've done their earthworks and civil works, and they're right at the stage now where they've done the curbing and they're about to put the tar seal down, and they'll have, for later on this year, probably about September, they'll have the first stage 65 odd lots of the 96 in total available for sale. We sold that lot for about $3.4 million. That was the highest bidder at the time. And those lots are now sort of likely to sell somewhere between 340, 350, through to 4 something per lot times 96, so $40 odd million there for their investment along the way, and they took the risk and they get the reward. Korkamea, much the same. We sold that lot also, and there's a development going on in there. In Naroto Estate, we've seen the developers come in and do the development for us, and now there's an opportunity maybe where we think about it a little bit differently and allow council to take a little bit more ownership of the development component of it and do the earthworks and the civil works and get these lots ready for sale. Nicole?
There's 65 coming on the market very shortly.
Yeah, 65 will be available for the market. Whether or not they're sold, it's still a bit of a debate. They might wait for the market to sort of settle down, or do what it does. But they've totally got control of that, which way they go, whether they sell them or.
Say them more desirable than what you were suggesting for the earthworks and proposed plan. Those sections, are they a bit more elevated or no?
No, not necessarily. No, they back onto Marshall Ave.
Yeah.
The Richmond Heights area, whereas the land that we're developing is going to back onto Naroto Estate, and much newer stock. Got access to, what's happening down at the Countdown and the upcoming lake house, and restaurants and commercial stuff there. So no, I don't think more desirable as such. Similar location, just across a gully.
Yeah.
Just across the gully.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks, Nicole. So we've got the business case here, and I know you haven't had it long, so I thought I might just quickly take you through it. It's just a simple one. I'm not quite sure why it's not turning the page. Nicole, I wonder if you could help us with that.
So you got New Zealand government logo down there. What was the reason of that?
New Zealand government, because the business case is built to the MB guidelines, so it's a better business case format. Yeah, so the block of land that we've got is, I guess you all know it. I'd like to be able to put it out on the screen. Here we go. The one here. Yeah. Yeah, working on it. It's large here.
We'll all come together around that then.
Yeah.
Maybe share and unshare.
Just very slow.
Very slow. Okay, so
You can read that to us, Philip.
yeah, I'll read this document. So it's basically quite an easy document to step your way through. And the main crux of the business case is there's two options in there. Basically, do we sell the land to a developer like we've been traditionally doing, or do we keep the land and develop it ourselves and turn it into, put the infrastructure in and get it ready for what the next phase of those lots might be.
Well, that's good.
One of the other things that is occurring on the land is that the intention of the EUL was that it would have quite a medium to high density. So there'd be some lots in there that were not currently being delivered in Taupō. And what's happening is we sell the super lots. The first thing that developers are doing is coming back to council and changing the plans and putting an amendment of the plan so they can produce larger lots to keep producing market houses, which are, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms with 2 or 3 bathrooms and garages attached, and not much coming in under the market under $1 million. So we're not really addressing the affordable market as we go. I think you can all see on this page here, it just talks about the EUL in its entirety, and right down the bottom, or the top left corner there is where the Mitre 10 mega is, through to Kolkomea down at the bottom left. This is the 80 lots showing in the turquoise down in the corner there. This is the area that we're looking at doing the development on, we're doing the earthworks on. So this is the bit, see if I can bring up a pointer here. Down in this corner here is where the Kolkomea village is. This is where the countdown is, and this is the area in here where we're looking to do the development of the land. And this is really the key decision here. It's quite simple. We either sell it as a lot to a developer to go ahead and continue to do what we've been seeing going on in the Neil Group land and what we've been seeing going in Kolkomea village, or we don't do that and we develop it ourselves and we turn this super lot into 80 lots, which are available for housing. And then we have a different way we might be able to release that land to try to encourage potentially some affordable housing with some different type of typology that we're currently not seeing in Taupō.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just through the chair, just for the entire council's comfort. There is a steering group of councillors that are working on this, like we have done Waiora House, the council building, and the airport. So if anyone's feeling like they're just being told something that they didn't know about, there are 5 of us that sit on a group and are very involved in this. So just for comfort.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And we're meeting monthly, sometimes fortnightly at the moment, just as things are starting to progress. So that's the 2 key decisions there. Well, 1 decision out of 2 options.
So the decision is whether we do earthworks or not. That's what you want to know today.
The decision is whether we do earthworks or not. Yep, whether we approve the funding to do the earthworks. And as well as the economic benefits, which is kind of on the next page where we're going to get to, there's like 100% uplift if council were to do that and undertake that course. There's also a timing advantage as well. So if we do undertake the earthworks ourselves, we're poised and in a position to be able to undertake those earthworks at the beginning of the next financial year, which is only sort of a month or 2 away. So by July, August, we can have diggers on the ground undertaking the works, as opposed to if a developer was to do it, we just make the decision to not do the earthworks, potentially sell the block. We'd have to go through a sale process. I'd miss the winter opportunity to do the earthworks because we're obligated to do our earthworks during the winter to avoid the summer dust. So we'd potentially lose a whole 12-month window there.
The actual disposal of the sections, that decision hasn't been made yet.
That decision hasn't been made, but we'd have control over that.
Just through the chair as well, I sent through some questions last night around the strategic property reserve, just wanting to understand that more. So I'm not sure when the appropriate time of the UL discussion is to bring that up, but I'm really keen to learn more about that.
So perhaps if we go through the business case, obviously we've got the other key part is the submission responses in front of us. If we do business case, and then answer questions on the strategic property reserve specifically to Jeanette. And then we can look at some questions.
Right, thank you.
If that's okay.
Yeah, there's even a page in the business case where that might come up, but the land value uplift through the valuations that we've had done, recent valuations that we've had done, demonstrate 100% increase if council were to take on the earthworks. So if we were to sell it as a lot, at the moment we're selling for about 4.5 million to a developer. So here's the lot, go ahead and do what you need to do on it. The value of the sections in a valuation we had just done last month is about $21.7 million. And the value of the earthworks is about 12.5. So the uplift for council is about 9 million if we undertake the earthworks ourselves. So it's a significant increase by just offloading the land.
That's a big sell.
Yeah, but also with the earthworks, we're talking about all the infrastructure and the roading.
Everything but the house and the letterbox.
Yeah, I just want to
Yep.
visualise that.
Further to everyone's question, so sewage, this, that and everything else?
All the infrastructure in place. Yeah, so a builder will basically come in and get a building consent to put up a house.
I want to preempt the later discussion, but just want to get, I think a big question is at what point we become a developer is the, and all the perception of that rather than reality. So, and just being quite clear of the bit that if we don't go ahead with this, we're still going to be doing this much, just around that as well.
Yeah, well, we've no intention of building houses.
Yeah.
But we have this opportunity through this project to put in the financials aside and the timeline advantage that we can get a 12-month sort of jump start, is the ability to deliver lots that have a typology that encourages more affordable homes.
Yeah.
And that's the real, one of the real advantages that we have got here. We can actually, by influence, we can encourage more affordable houses.
And through the chair, Phil, it's fair to say that there's a separate work stream happening on a housing strategy.
Entirely, yep.
Yeah.
And the housing strategy is going to be out for consultation in the month of June.
Councillor Linda.
I don't know whether you can give us any further update on this, but I saw on Sunday night's news the direction of travel from central government is that they want to see 30 years worth of development move forward to now. And they're looking at subsidies and grants and ways to make that happen. Do you have any further information from what was reported in the media?
Well, from what I understand, it requires a change of government for that to kind of kick in, maybe. And only what I've heard in the media as well, it's kind of breaking. And, obviously there's a real concern, particularly in a lot of regions, districts, towns, cities, about, the ability to provide residential houses. But we're really unique here in Taupō because we've got this 110 hectares, which is already zoned for housing and it's owned by council. So we're in a position that no other council that I know of is in. We're really fortunate.
And we did apply to the fund, but there was on the basis that some social houses and all that sort of thing, and we've turned that down.
The AIF, the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund that we spent.
This seemed to be something quite different on Sunday night, not actually.
Yeah, and there'll always be those opportunities for us to make sure we keep our ear to the ground and we keep on lobbying and make sure we participate in those as we go along.
Councillor Campbell?
I just said the chair. I mean, I'm just lot sizes. You're insinuating that we decide the lot sizes, the size of lots. I mean, terraced housing, of course, would have bigger lots. Is that if you're setting, well, what's the minimum lot size you want? 400 square meters, 300 square meters.
Yeah.
So that's one house. But obviously, it's not a terraced. That would negate the possibility for, well, at least you combine lots for someone developer to come in and do a whole bunch of 2-3 level terraced housing, but for 20 units across 4 or 5 of those lots, is that how it works?
Yeah, we've been doing quite a lot of work with urban design team, context architecture, that have done a lot of work up in Brentwood and also in the Kaukamea village and surrounding estates. And part of the typology will be some of these walk-up apartments. Some of them will be duplex. Some of them will be attached, and some of them was so that there's a whole range of houses in there. And lots
one
of
lot, say 1,000 square meters.
Yeah.
I mean that's setting up for some 2 or 3 terraced level
Absolutely.
block of eight units or more. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right.
Or maybe just
Yes,
catch us up to the, to the December, what we did in December, going out to the market and sort of testing the water with some builders coming in. And, that control that we've got as council, being able to dictate what we want to see developed on that land.
Yeah, so we went out and we did a procurement piece to bring together house builders, so people that would build the houses for us on the land that we end up preparing for a builder to come and build the houses on. And we've went through the phase 1, the ROI component of that, and we're about to enter into the, based on today's decision, really enter into phase 2 of that, where we would be in the RFP phase, where we would ultimately select a builder to build these houses for us. And the quicker that we can get that person on board with us to go through the design process to ensure that what we are imagining through our design and architectural and urban design team aligns with what they can build, it really ensures that what we prepare as lot sizes and what we prepare in that village is going to be something that we can ultimately build, sell, and at affordable prices.
Councillor Williamson.
Thanks. It's obviously just following up on Kylie's comments, and obviously any comments on making, speculation, based on assumptions as well, with the Australian government or subsidies available for this sort of type of development. With the obviously with the $4.7 million we have to approve in the long-term plan, we could have some impact on that possibly, but also with that $4.7 million, obviously we're making assumptions that it will be approved, obviously. So we develop a long-term plan, so that's consulted again.
No, that's the 4.7 is the valuation.
That is just on this one block.
The 4.7 on the screen is if we were to sell it to a developer as a lot.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's the valuation, the recent valuation we had to say, look, if you dump it as a lot on the market like you've been currently doing,
Yeah.
that's what we get here.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. So Peter, not wanting to put words in your mouth, but words in your mouth here. The decision we're being asked to make is a yes or no. We approve the funding. So if we say if we go either way, there are ongoing consequences and a flow-on effect from that. So if we say no, we will continue to get what we've always got. So no, there will be no change. So we're facing a housing crisis. We've faced it for some time, and there will be no difference to that if we say no to this. And no disrespect to developers, but they are developers for a reason. That's their business. They're there to make money, and all power to them. However, the housing stock that's being built does not align with the housing stock which the market is demanding. Now, you might argue with that because they're selling everything as soon as they come on the market. However, there is a significant number of people who cannot afford to get on the housing ladder, who cannot get into housing, and any business in town who's trying to attract staff, some of them can't, including us, because there's nowhere for them to live. So on the other side, if we approve this, we get to hold all the trump cards. So, and the detail is lot size. Do we build terrace houses? Do we build them out of brick or wood or straw or whatever we do? That's detail later on. It actually doesn't matter. What matters is we control both the release and the supply of this and the affordability side of it, so that we can enable those who otherwise would not be able to get a house to do so. So we can create a step change in the market in Taupō, which is what other communities have done, like Havelock North and Hastings, and make a difference. And going back to the IAF fund, Kaingaroa wanted, correct me if I'm wrong, about 1,000 of the 1,600 odd lots to for us to access that money, and we just said point blank no.
It went from 101 when we started to 1,000 by the time we got to the end.
So totally inappropriate. So I guess I'm probably indicating which way I'm leaning in this by the way I'm speaking. But if we don't move in the direction of doing this, and I've read the submissions and some of them are, it's none of your business, you haven't got a clue, don't touch it, to you need to provide housing. Well, you can't do both. So if we don't make a step change here, we can't complain in 12 months or 5 years time that, gosh, there's a housing shortage, because we have an opportunity to affect a change. End of sermon.
Councillor Lachlan, I'm sorry.
It's all right, up to Danny.
I mean, I think the case has been made, like Kevin suggested. So my question earlier was more around, we've got a whole lot of people that there's like a continuum in terms of our submissions. On one end, there's like, you should never do anything like this, you know, blah, 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 which in theory is just a theoretical thing, which is good to know, but it's not a real thing. It's just a view. Further in is quite a high risk development type arrangement, and from what I'm seeing in terms of business case, we're not at that extreme. I think the perception of some of our submitters is that we are at that extreme, and I think if we have some comfort, which I think I've got from earlier discussions on this today, is that we are just doing this much, which gives us flexibility to do more or less, whatever we want to do. And we've had assurances from previous sessions in terms of the risk around earthquakes and ways that those things can be mitigated. So I suppose I'm showing my cards too in terms of my leanings, but that was the driver of my question. So not saying don't want to do this, just want to be clear that if I say yes, that I'm also doing that on the basis that some of the concerns of the submissions around the being extreme development, extreme risk, is not what I want. It was all cool.
Thanks, Danny. Councillor Park, Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. This to me is and I'm showing my card, showing my hand as well, is an investment. It's not liability. We're getting the best bang out of the land for the ratepayers' benefit, I think, as well. And who better to put in pipes and roads than council? What we learned from the Hooker Falls road development, where the old radio station was, that we needed to really be careful about selling lots of land and the aesthetics to that. And I was involved earlier in the Penny Home, John Penny and Tahara Management Limited, but then stepped out for a conflict of interest. But we were really strong on the aesthetics of what a development looks like, so we had control on our being Taupō and not being undervalued or underdone, really. So I think that we're in a perfect space to do this. We own the land, so whether we do or don't do this, it's ours. We don't have to sell it at any particular time. Like a couple of submitters talked about, well, the market's in a downwards cycle, yes, but even if we invest this money into the land, I mean, we don't have to sell it in downtimes. We don't know. We don't know what we don't know, but I just think this is an investment. We're going to make ratepayers more money, and therefore the 8% in depreciation perhaps will be soaking up in revenue. I don't know. I just think that it's a no-brainer.
Thank you. Councillor Leonard.
Just got a little bit confused through this conversation. We've got the land value uplift there, and then I heard from Councillor Taylor saying that we're trying to provide affordable housing. So I feel like with this project, we've almost got confused. Are we trying to make money out of it? Are we trying to provide affordable sections to people. I hear what you're saying, Councillor Park, but also it is going to cost somewhere, and like whether we're borrowing money, it's not free money to develop this. Yeah, I've just got lost amongst the purpose of what we're doing here.
Councillor Shepherd, and then
Well, I can answer that.
I'm sure.
Although I probably could too, but go for it.
I'm not trying to be
No, no,
rude.
no. So it's both. The whole purpose of starting this project was around the lack of affordable housing and the shortage of housing stock in Taupo, and leveraging off the very powerful position we've got, as Pico's already said, that we own the land. So there are councils around the country who are falling over themselves to buy land to get to where we already are. So that's the position. So I guess from my perspective, and correct me if I've misinterpreted all of the meetings we've had, this is about providing affordable housing, but it's at no cost to the ratepayer. This will pay for itself and return a dividend as well.
The next point is the affordable housing side of the housing. You know, how much of these houses actually end up, and that will be how we just, you know, discuss the strategy, how we dispose of them later on. You know, that's when that affordable can really come into it, when we can dictate it. Councillor Shepherd.
So I read through all the submissions on this with great interest, obviously, and I feel that a lot of the no, don't do it submissions were probably lacking some context. We were pretty short, you know, we didn't have a lot of information in the consultation document, and I found the discussion out at Kinloch really valuable and interesting because they had some really valid questions. Now, they initially were a no submission, but you would have noticed that Pat King, when he came back, said, well, actually, I asked a few more questions and we now feel it's a good risk to take. So my feeling is that a lot of the no's were a little bit naive of the context and the facts and the direction we're trying to take. So I feel quite comfortable in moving forward, to be honest with you. I think we're in a position to affect some really good change. We can effectively have our cake and eat it too in some regards, you know. We've got control. We can have some say over what's built, where's built, you know, obviously with consideration to legislation and what have you. So, you know, nothing changes if nothing changes, and we've got this really unique opportunity, and I think it would be very short-sighted to sell it off to a developer and not develop ourselves to a certain degree. I'm in favour certainly of getting as far as the civil and earthworks done. Yeah.
Councillor Westerman.
And just appreciating the whole block won't be affordable housing, and it'll be pepper potted through there. Again, council will be able to set the parameters of how that's going to look and feel, because we're working closely with the builder. And the other fact that, actually funny, I ran into Phil Riley the other day from Shield Consultants, and he said, good move, the council doing the development to that stage. He said, that's when us developers, and he's been involved in Naroto and Seven Oaks and numerous developments around Taupo, and that's where they make a lot of their money. And he thinks because council own all of the land, this is a really good opportunity for council to actually step in and do the infrastructure in the way that they want to, and then they are controlling it. Previously with some of the land in around that area, it's been a bit here, and then councils had to scuttle off and do the earthworks, or you know, I'm thinking in the Roto we had to do pump stations and things like that. So we're actually going to control the total development over the 110 hectares over a certain period of time, and we can dictate when this next one's going to roll out. So Phil said, hey, that's a good move. He said, don't get tied up in being a housing developer. He said, go to that stage and stop.
Also, through the chair, we also have control over the timeframes, which is key, because if we sell this land to a developer, they can just sit on it and do nothing. And then we've got no new houses. And then when they do develop, it'll be the $1 million plus, and we're no better off. So we've got a lot of control over how, when, what. Yeah.
Councillor Wahine.
Just to follow on Evan and Kylie's put it all. Yeah, I think there is a little bit of confusion. Well, put it this way, in my mind, we're just making this decision and it is going to that stage, and that stage I think that would give enough comfort in terms of our citizens, our ratepayers. But I think the housing strategy is a work in progress. This enables us to do a whole lot more things in terms of a housing strategy, but I don't think we've made that decision. I think this is just getting up to a certain stage. Appreciate that, that's in the back of our mind, and so it should be. But for me, until the housing strategy is done, this is just doing this big project moving forward. But it is an important enabler which gives us some options that we otherwise.
Councillor Greenslade.
Thank you, Richard. So when's the, what's the timeline when you have completed, ready to look at doing the housing part of it?
Look, we were, based on a decision today, we could have earthworks beginning in the month of July, August, running through the winter. So that's the earthworks component of it. At that time, we would also bring on potentially the housing builder, partner. We would bring that person on board with us, or that consortium maybe, to ensure that our design and their designs are well aligned, and that there's no, we can't build it because we didn't talk to you first. Then through the summer, we would be doing the infrastructure, the underground infrastructure, pipes and curbs and roading and so on. And then these lots would be ready to build on about this time next year, but it's probably a little bit later. So we've got it down as November next year, we're ready to build.
18 months. Great, thank you.
Councillor Campbell and then Councillor Page.
No, I think doing the earthworks stage makes sense. But my reading of some of the submissions in opposition is not that they're against new housing per se, but it's that there's a scepticism, a healthy scepticism that this council has the operational capability to do it properly. I suggest moving forward, make a good effort at transparency. Like, we don't just announce we're doing the earthworks, back it up with reasoning, because the developer might hold onto land and all this. A greater effort at transparency, certainly at this stage. And if we do decide to go further than the earthworks, then yeah, a good effort to be transparent of the reasons why we're moving in that direction and how we're going to do it to alleviate this healthy scepticism that we know what we're doing.
Sorry, Councillor Park and Councillor.
Just on the back of Councillor Campbell's comments, I think the healthy scepticism is around the word develop. Like, the minute people hear we're going to develop the land, they think that we're becoming developers as opposed to we're going to set up the land for development by putting in infrastructure, basically. So I think that's where the healthy scepticism there may be that naive, as Councillor Shepherd said, that naivety around what the actual, what it is. So maybe, and I think we've been as transparent as we can, but maybe it's around thinking about how we can communicate it without the word develop.
I think Councillor Campbell was asking way too. Is there capacity out there to do this job?
But the capacity is there for the earthworks component of it, definitely, because we've been sort of testing the market, and we thought that Napier might give us, soak everybody up.
Sure.
But there's been real interest. There's some real interest in these guys that have got gear potentially sitting around all winter with nothing to do. So we think we'll be oversubscribed in that respect.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Not totally setting a precedent. We did a cattle rights subdivision years ago. We're not going quite as far. We actually had to take control of the sales sections, but so that was a great return to the community for the late day as well.
Councillor Wilson. Councillor Shepherd. What's there? Councillor Shepherd. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And, you know, business is slowing down for developers too. So our local developers and our staffing contingent are going to need this work actually. So we're going to be keeping some of these people in business through a really quiet time. So I think we've got, you know, multiple angles to look at this as a benefit to the community, including keeping our developers up and running in a potential recessionary time.
Councillor Lachlan, and then back to you, Philip.
Already said my piece. Just from an administrative point of view, I don't feel like I'm conflicted or anything in this, but obviously I'm surrounded by people. Most of us are actually by people who are actually interested in EUL and the next stage and everything else. So just to keep myself safe and transparent and everything else is, how do we, before we make the resolution, I mean, I literally don't have any sort of direct interest whatsoever in terms of anything that might be happening, but I'm in a room with people that talk about it all the time during coffee. Not all the bit boring, but it is that. Just wanna, how do we manage that?
Right, it's your decision, Danny. If you
Oh.
think there are some conflicts there at this stage of the development, you know, you make that. You're most welcome to, you know, remove yourself from the vote if you want. It's your call.
And I think it may be helpful just to clarify what the decision actually is. So the decision for today is about investing 7.6 million to undertake earthworks and civil infrastructure. So you can ponder that, and would you have a conflict with that particular decision?
My questions are, Philip, for your services. So got enough water capacity up there, wastewater and all that, so that you won't come to us and they go, oh shit, we need a reservoir. Sorry. We need a reservoir.
Oh gosh. I would say, oh gosh. No, we've worked closely with our infrastructure team and our, the simplest, most, the part of the EU one that's got the most capacity is the area that we're working in. So we were guided there 18 months ago that like, if you're going to do some work soon, this is the space, as opposed to down the other end, to closer to right at 10 mega, and their new neighbours there'd be some infrastructure required there.
The second question is timing. So Neil Group is going to expose 80, how many sections?
They've got 96 in total. I think they're doing it in 2 stages. So the first stage was 65 around about.
Going on shortly. We're admittedly going to be a couple of years later.
Yeah.
They're private developers, so you know we don't really do worry about them. Make sure that they are successful as well. Won't you feel that it won't cross-pollinate with the market?
We don't believe so. The market will decide where it wants to spend its money and how much it wants to spend on it. And we can't really control that. What we can control is lot sizes, typology, and build cost.
So, you know, we've flooded the market before in certain situations, and of course, no buyers turn up, and there is a you know, downturn slightly on at the moment, or they'll be coming back in Auckland now. So, continue here. And just regarding, and this is probably not for this conversation, but you mentioned a builder. You know, how many sections we got that are going to create there?
80.
So we would not, you know, and yeah, this is up to the subcommittee, but I would not like to expose it to one builder.
A builder or consortium.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, a consortium. As long as all the local builders bail me up, so we just can't get the exception, that's all tied up with such.
Yeah.
So but that's another conversation later on, which we'll be involved with.
Yeah, well, look, on the first 80, we're likely to bring to you a winner that's either a consortium or a entity that is going to deliver these 80 homes for us.
As long as we can show transparent and be fair.
Totally transparent. Yep. Yeah, we're in a 2-stage process.
There's a lot of spec builders out there that you know, they can't get their hands on land, and it's they've got people, families, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
As long as we've covered those off. All right. Andrew.
Chair, just wanted to address your question about infrastructure. So this would still go through all the regulatory processes it would go through. We're not shortcutting any of those processes. So terms of assessment of infrastructure capacity and all that, that would still go through any other process. I just wanted to assure everyone here that we're not going to be taking any.
So prior to the works, do we have to get a consent
We're in the process of consenting with WRC at the moment.
already?
Yeah.
Get this approved and then, oh, you know, 4 months for a consent.
When I read through the submissions, of course, I read through them as well, and a lot of the questions were around uncertainty of the financial uplift, and I think that a lot of those questions will be answered when the business case is, read through, and it'll explain some of those queries. But some of the other concerns were around council's expertise and ability to deliver this. And I think it's good to share with you that the team that we've pulled around us to deliver this, the designers and the consenting agencies and the surveyors, and they're all local, and they've all been involved in Kokemia Neil Group. They've all been involved in all that land there, so they're really well known. They know the land, they know the area, they know the councils, they know what's expected around stormwater discharges, and so this is all stuff that is in really safe hands. It's nothing new to any of this team that we've pulled together to pull it together for us.
All included in this figure?
All included in the figure. Yeah.
Right.
I was just about to say too, so a point that I was beginning to make before was that a lot of the no's were saying, actually, no, we don't want this to affect our rates. So they were unaware that this would not impact their rates. So that was another really big hurdle, I think, mentally for the people submitting and saying no.
It's got to ask this, Jeanette. Is there impact on the rates at all? Capital works.
As we outlined in the consultation document, we said that we would fund any interest on the loan and to do the work from the strategic property reserve, so that would not impact rates.
Just one thing that so also there was the point made around iwi. So the local hapu to this land are involved.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Councillor Truman, welcome.
Yes, sorry, I was like, just in support of what Rachel was saying, when we had our Mangakino consultation for the annual plan, we had a room full of people that were totally against this. Explained to them about the rates, the zero rates impact. So I think it was people hyped up on the fact that our rates were increasing so much, and this was something else we're doing. Don't do it because that will decrease the rates impacts. So once they realised that, they realised that there could be a profit from it, even though there's a risk, which we didn't really give for some people enough information about. But that's something we don't know either. But once they realised that, a whole lot of them changed their mind. So I think from the reading submissions, I could kind of get the feeling too, well, they don't quite understand. Maybe some of them.
Councillor Westman.
So can you just go over there's about 300 sections in that block. And we're talking 80 affordable homes is what we're trying to message in there.
Yeah, so if you look at the turquoise lot there, that's the 300 lot, what we refer to as lot 20. So that's the 300 homes there. What we're seeking today is $7.646 million to be able to begin the first stage of these 80 homes. So the first 80 lots, which we could begin this winter, roll into.
Is it just 80 affordable homes? It's going to be the mix, isn't it?
Not 80 affordable homes, 80 lots, which will include a third. What we're seeking is 100 affordable homes spread throughout the 300.
So it's just that turquoise.
It's the turquoise
So
lot.
stuff on the right-hand side, the bottom side.
That's not part of the first 300.
Still all that houses.
That's all ours, all the way through there. There's between the turquoise and the mustard, there's about 600 lots available to us there. And that's before we get onto the other side of Lower Lane.
So the 80 lots, how many residential units? 3 bedroom.
Sorry, 80 dwellings.
Or
80 dwellings, yeah.
80 lots and 80 dwellings. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. As 80 lots we're talking about, and we've got to make the dwellings will be largely defined by,
Oh, so there's no terrace housing in the first block. 80.
when we bring on this design team with us, the people that are building the house will sort of define the numbers a little bit, whether they walk up, walk down, how, you know, how the design of it looks.
We've got an incredible lot of thanks to our previous council for procuring this land.
Oh, it's incredible.
They didn't have to, time with the bypass thing, but they got off at, 7, but they wouldn't more say, Mum or Andrew Dibble at the time, God. And as he said before, who would love to be in this situation? The previous council, I think Kevin said, yeah. Councillor Eva, Dorothy, yeah, your mum was part of the decision, like amazing.
Amazing.
And it was cheap. I can't remember what we paid, but it wasn't much.
It's always cheap in hindsight, so.
Yeah.
You remember, it's very true. Because there is confusion from the public about the actual cost in the 7.6. And I think everyone thought that was it. And of course, it's a two-stage thing over, that's just the senior thing.
So we're seeking the 7.646 million now to get us started. And we, in the business case, we talk about the seed funding, to get us kicked off. And we'll be back through the long-term plan to talk about other stages of it.
Homes around, it's really what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Councillor Shepherd.
And I think it's important to remember we're only deciding today on earthworks and civil works. And then we've got a housing strategy to work through as to how we address the land from there, as well as everything else, housing for the elderly and things like that. So we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves at this point. All we really need to do is decide whether we are going to progress that first stage. And then we can feed into the housing strategy, and that will then help us decide how we use that land.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, through the chair. Just, I'm hearing a lot, and it's great, awesome information, and really starting to shape a good picture, especially around, I think, council's history with regards to this type of development. I feel the further stage we're moving into, I think I'm quite comfortable with our expertise in being able to handle this first part of, but where we progress from that point onwards. Are we setting a new precedents in that regard, or do we have a storied successful history as we move to the next stages of this development? Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm quite comfortable with where we're at in terms of right now, moving forward. But then are we starting to move outside of our lane as well? Basically trying to get to when we move. And I appreciate what you said with regards to the team that you've brought together and the level of local expertise you have within that team, which is great. But again, is there an element here of us moving outside of our lane?
I think what we're doing here is opening up all the opportunities for you to consider, and we won't. And there's lots of off ramps on the way, so we can take it to the 80, we can take it to the 300, we could potentially roll out the whole 1600 and do what's other developers have done around us, and we could control the release of that whole land over the next decade or more. And at some point through that conversation, we probably need to think of our children and think about where we could buy the next block of land, so that we haven't spent it all in our generation. So by making the decision today, you've opened up all the opportunities for you to consider.
All right, we're getting there. Item 1 of the annual plan.
Nearly there. So I think that
just before Wellington. Are we doing the resolution now, or?
I'm sorry, I would like to know about this. Sorry, Your Worship, I'd like to know more about the strategic property reserve, like how it was going to be.
Cool. Ken, do we do each one by resolution? Would you like each one done by resolution of the main topics of the annual plan?
Clarification about your decision, and then at the end of the day, we'll pause for 15 minutes and go away and craft the resolutions properly, and then we'll move to adopt.
Yeah, just back to you, Philip, just quickly before Jeanette talk, how many in the submissions, how many for and how many against?
It was 55 again, was it? 55 again, and the remainder unknown or slightly opposed.
So 55.
55.86 against. No, I don't agree.
55 for and 86 against.
No, 55 against.
55 against.
No, I don't
how many
agree.
for? 34.
34 for, and the remainder unknown.
Okay, so 34 versus 54.
No, 35 based on their interpretation.
34 here.
But is that something we
Okay.
need to work on, is how we express these in these documents, because to your point,
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, that's certainly the feedback I got.
Right, okay, so we have strategic finance division 792 fund.
So I've had a question about the strategic property reserve. So I spent a bit of time going through the last, basically all our LTPs very quickly. It was interesting to note that we've been talking about affordable housing ever since the 2006-16 long-term community. LTCCP, I can't remember what it's called. So this is a fruition of something that's been started a very long time ago. So the strategic property reserve, when we start something like this, and there's going to be quite a bit of cash flowing in and out, what we do is we set up a reserve so that we can keep track of where that of the money coming in and the money, what it's been used for, what it's been applied to. So this is an equity reserve. So it sits in our balance sheet under equity. If you look in our annual report, you'll see a line that says council created reserves, and there's a breakdown, a further breakdown of all the reserves that we have, and this is where this reserve sits. So for just a little bit of information for you, this reserve would have been set up around 2006 when we started doing the whole property thing, and it's been in use ever since then. It's not until 2015-25 LTP that we actually publicly expressed what the reserve was for, because up until that point, we must not have had to put in a schedule of reserves into the long-term plan. So in that long-term plan, we stated the purpose of the fund as to fund specific strategically based property purchases and associated projects district. So it's for the whole district, even though most of the money that's coming in at the moment is from this one area around the township of Taupō. So since 2018-28 long-term plan, the focus of the fund has been to pay down, is to do that and also pay down infrastructural debt. So we've been making supplementary loan repayments out of this reserve to fund the repayment of debt. The fund was also used to repay the capital costs that we incurred for the East Taupō arterial route. So some of you will recall that council funded about a quarter of it, 25 to 27% of a quarter of the cost of the road. And the plan was that the sale of the EUL lands would be used to pay for that. And that's what it was used for. It's also been used for when we've done previous developments like this, similar to this, or when we've actually been a property developer in the early days. The funds from this reserve have been used to pay back any loans relating to that work. So since 2006, these numbers boggle me a little bit. We have received $67.7 million in sales of property. 67.7 million. We have used 34.4 million of that to repay debt. Now, obviously, a lot of that was the ETA, but 34.4. We've also cash funded some projects to the value of 5.2 million. Sorry, I can't tell you what they were. I didn't look into that in deep. In 2007, not sure why, but in the 2013 and to 15 part of the, in the 12 to 22 long-term plan, You'll recall that would have been just after the global financial crisis. The financial strategy was that this fund, along with another fund, would be used to subsidise rates. So we have subsidised rates from this fund to the tune of $8.3 million. We also, in 2010-11, because of the global financial crisis, we subsidised the interest on those ETA and property loans from this fund, similar to what we're talking about doing now. And that was nearly $7 million, $6.7 million was used for that. And most recently, you have injected some money into the Taupo Airport of just under $2 million. So that leaves the balance currently we estimate the balance at the close of June will be just over $10 million sitting in that fund.
I thought that the subsidisation of rates previously was through the TEL.
It was, but after the global financial crisis, I think, sorry, I didn't look at the whole long-term plan, but I think our rates increases were going to be quite horrendous. And because the economy was suffering after that, after the GFC, the decision was made to subsidise rates also from this fund.
You also, Jenny, I think at some point we're also capitalising on we're borrowing money to pay the interest, aren't we, as well?
I don't think so. We use this fund to cover the interest cost of the particular loans that related to the East Taupō arterial and any property development. So we had quite a lot of loans and that was a big cost. And so we use this fund to actually fund that interest for a period.
Yes, sorry, just through the chair. From a layman's perspective, and so we're not rating people to put money into a fund. So how is the reserve funded?
The reserve is the cash received that goes in there, the 67 million
From property
was
sales.
from property sales.
I thought the policy was that all property sales were to pay down debt.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That's a part
saying.
of what
Right.
it was.
That is the policy now.
in
So the purpose of the reserve, to recap, is to fund specific strategically based property purchases and associated projects. And in the financial strategy, we also talk about it being used to pay down infrastructure debt.
Right.
And that's basically what we have been doing with it for since 2018. We've been using it to supplementary pay down debt. The most recent slight departure from the debt was to fund the airport, which could be argued that it's a strategic type asset. But you made a conscious decision to do that. So all that 67 million has come from land sales of East Urban lands, of commercial property, Botanical Heights. You think about all the developments that we've done over the last 10 to 15 years, all that money has contributed $67.7 million.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Lachlan.
I think we need to be on, and it's right to ask the question in terms of we need to be on top of the purpose of the reserves for. Are they still needed or was it? I think we do need to give some thought in terms of, so we're looking at doing this earthworks, we're going to sell some more properties. Is our current policy, for want of a better word, to put those profits back into this reserve?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
We need to keep, through the chair, we need to keep a tab on the money. So if we just let it go into general funds, we'd lose track of what we spend the money on.
And we may be using it to further reduce debt.
We are using it to reduce debt.
Pay down. So that will do the long-term plan.
Well, hey, thank you, Jeanette, for researching all that, and it's good to know.
There was another question about if we had any other reserves. The only other reserve we have probably of this nature is the forestry reserve. So currently there's just under $6 million sitting in there, and the purpose of that is to be used in the establishment, maintenance and operation of council forestry blocks. But as I said in the past, we have actually used it to subsidise rates and to pay down debt as well. But that's the only reserve of that nature.
It'd be good to get a forestry update at some stage, too. Yeah. Yeah.
You might not like what you hear, but
Yeah.
an update soon.
Hey. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, you try. All right, Councillor Fletcher.
Through the chair, just one more question. So I think we're fine again, this part of what we're going to be funding, but obviously this is just stage one of how we're moving forward with this project. So, and with the reserve pretty much depleted, where would the money then come to fund any future stages to this specific project?
So you're talking about the fund is depleted, 10 million is actually probably healthy.
But are we taking the $7.6 million out of that 10 million?
No, so what we'll do is when we do this work, we'll raise a loan for this work.
Okay,
And we'll subsidise the interest cost on the loan from the reserve.
gotcha.
When we sell the sections, then we would pay back the loan and you'd end up with a balance that would go in, that would stay in the fund.
When we sell the sections, the money will go straight into this fund.
Yes, the cash proceeds go into the fund. So the equity reserves are all about cash.
How many equity reserves do we have, so each year?
Not as many as we used to. So that your equity reserves are made up of your depreciation reserves, your development contribution reserves, and other special reserves. So they're listed in the annual report, about note 28 maybe. And of course, they've all got specific purposes. Now we've consolidated a lot of the depreciation reserves down because we've gone to district-wide water and district-wide.
Councillor Westman.
Just a couple of queries. When you talk about we'll go out and get a loan, who is that loan with?
So we do most of our long-term debt borrowing through the New Zealand Local Government Funding Agency. So it would just form part of our portfolio of loans. We don't specifically go out and borrow $7.646 million. We will work out how much we need to borrow for the year for 23-24, and we would go out and borrow a full tranche of say 20 or 15 or whatever.
And I think you talked about this reserve had previously been used to subsidise rates.
Yeah.
And just thinking that there has been quite negative comments through the submission on using that depreciation option to keep the rates low. Should this have been perhaps part of our discussion on using that instead of doing the depreciation?
Okay, so a couple of things on that question. First of all, we have to refer to our revenue and financing policy, which clearly states that the revenue from the sale of land, sale of assets, and the is to be used for debt reduction, and also our depreciation and other financial reserves, of which this forms part, should be used for capital expenditure and loan repayments. So if you made the decision to subsidise rates from this reserve, you would be making a conscious departure or breach of your financing revenue and financing policy. The second thing is it's a bit like a depreciation reserve, even though you don't have to pay the fund back the amount that you've used, because you have to keep using it. Because if you say you subsidised, I don't know, $3 million out of this reserve, next year, that's the cost that $3 million is covering will still be there, and you'll still have an impact on rates the following year if you just do a one-off. So just like the depreciation reserve, we say that we are going to recover it over the next 2 years by increasing rates. Whilst we don't have to recover the cash, the impact is still there because you'll take it away again, and there'll still be that large increase in rates because you're not going to subsidise it anymore. So whilst it is an option, it's not a favourable option. Yeah.
And just on the first question you raised, Councillor, on the LGF here is actually, I don't know if everyone's familiar, it's actually a trading bank that we're shareholders of.
I just
So
want
we're
to
actually
get out.
borrowing it off ourselves.
Yeah, so council.
I don't know what our percentage of shareholding is, so, you know,
We've
not bigger than that.
Well, we're one of, I think, 60 to 70 councils that own the
Yeah, so we
New
don't go
Zealand
to a trading,
local funding
don't
agency.
go to a trading bank, ANZ or anything like that. Sometimes we do, but normally it's the LGF bank. So supposedly. Good point.
Pretty good range.
Okay, well, I think we've, had a good convo about that. We really comfortable going ahead with Philip's proposal?
I wish.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, thank you, Philip. Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you so much.
We will look forward to seeing the bulldozers going.
Yeah, same. There are bulldozers currently working at 30 Mahawi Street.
All right, good.
That's behind placemakers. That's the land that runs up towards Huron Park that we've got off Contact Energy. 12 weeks ago.
That's getting it ready for
Sale
sale.
for sale.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Morning tea.
Item 1, morning tea. Oh, sorry, it was here long ago, but hey, great discussion and big discussion too. Just the demand is going to be still there, which I'm sure was such a desirable occupation.
Go through the chair, that we own it.
Yeah.
And we can invest this money in it. We can control it itself.
Yeah, it doesn't exclude the private market developer from it at all, you know. Some person come along, about 25 cents or 30 cents. Lovely, Jeanette. What are you waiting there for depreciation?
I'm waiting for you to release us to get a cup of coffee.
Quick cup of tea? Yeah, 10 minutes and back up. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. We will go on to the next subject now, which I believe could be depreciation. The suggestion, the funding of, delaying of, whatever the call it off. Been very proud over the years, we've always 100% depreciated everything over the years. This is the first year, slight departation, but not a major one, but it does put a little bit of relief on our people. Yeah, 2.5%. Yeah. So, people will be up everywhere, how expensive groceries are and all that sort of thing. So it's pretty expensive, costly to live a life these days. So, but I believe it's around the world. So there. Councillor Lachlan.
Sorry, to be unhelpful. Just before we start, just curious, we had the 2 years where we froze the rates. 1 year, sorry. How did we fund that? Or that was just a good year? Or how did we fund that?
Now.
We didn't charge less.
Just reduce the level of services.
No, sandwiches at lunchtime.
So we've done through, maybe Jeanette. Was it operational stuff?
We're basically catching up this year because our costs have continued to increase and, insurance has gone up. Electricity's gone up. So we're bearing the fruits of that. Well, it was probably a bit of a decision at the time. We had to catch up. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm ready for the rest of the session.
Cool. Right. Jeanette, do we have the implications or suggestions? What is your suggestion?
So this part's talking about the, basically the deferral of depreciation, and its relationship to the proposed average rates increase. Just to refresh your memory, we've gone out with an 8.6% rates increase, and that is being subsidised by not rating for 8% of our depreciation across the board. So that's over all of our assets, not just roading or not just three waters, it's buildings, operational assets, three waters, roading. So we're not going to rate for some of that money to put into those funds so that we can pay for our renewals in the future. However, we will need to catch that back up in the following 2 years, in the first 2 years of our long-term plan. So that 8% will have to be added back. So currently that sits at around just under $2 million.
Right, who wants to go first?
We had the submissions, Davis, on this.
So we had submissions and we had 50% agreed with postponing the depreciation and 25% opposed it, so that they wanted the rates to be increased to the higher level, and we had 20% that didn't know, possibly because they didn't understand it.
Okay. Councillor Shepherd.
I'll be honest with you, I've got some real concerns about proceeding with this. Like you say, we're catching up now from a previous decision, and it's not going to get any better in the next couple of years. So I think we're probably looking at rates increases already, potentially. And I don't want to add to that burden by making this decision now. So this is a hard one, because I see that most people do in the submissions do want us to short fund depreciation, but my gut feeling is that this might be a bad decision.
Councillor Park.
Yeah, I'm along similar lines as Councillor Shepherd. I was part of a council that made the decision at the time to have a slight decrease in rates, if not increase. And in hindsight, I think we shouldn't have done that. So I'm interested in the conversation, but I'm not sure I'm willing to take this risk for future ratepayers.
Sorry, Kirsty next, Councillor Croonan, and then Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, so I would normally be thinking along the same lines because of from previous experience. But in this case, especially for Mangakino, I think just because they've been hit so hard with the changes in valuation, I mean, that can be a good thing for a lot of people, but for rates, their rates are going to be, so much different this next time. This, to me, this is the way that will smooth it out. So yes, they will get a big increase this year, and then they know that they'll still get increases, but it won't be such a shock. That's it'll slightly lessen it, which I think is the whole point of this, is for those areas that have been the hardest hit with the changes in their capital value. So yeah.
Councillor Williamson, and then Councillor Rankin, and then Lachlan.
Thanks for you now. Who's going to make me feel guilty now with that one?
I get it
first. Manners point of view, we've been through that. Obviously, it was the right thing. It's the right field to do 2 or 3 years ago with the zero rates increase. And obviously, have done ourselves, the community, necessarily any favours, we'll have to catch up for that. It's going to be the same. Be a good field to do it this year. I think I'm going to hear all the commentary around about, and I agree as well. It's been a tough economy. It's tough for a lot of families, a lot of ratepayers, but I'm not going to be doing any favours. Certainly the ratepayers, the community, and for ourselves. Maybe address this with a long-term plan. We have this Jeanette saying we have to catch up. And also the thing is, with not necessarily going to impact on our capital projects, because that's it's all to do with, and it's mentioned, catching up all the other costs, operational costs. So we can't get away from it. It's going to have to happen.
Councillor Rankin.
Look, I agree with the against comments, sorry. But look, I think we did learn a lesson when we had a nil rates increase. We just bent over backwards to make that happen, and our people have paid a price. And I don't think that they need to go on paying that price, and they will. And I know Kinloch is different, but when we were there, we had some very direct conversations about it. The people in the audience were business owners who thought that it was the dopiest business decision you could make, and they literally begged us, and that's going too far, not to do it, because it's a silly thing to do. It will catch up with you. And they were very strong about it. And I know that in other parts people weren't, but I often think, and I don't mean this in any demeaning way, that people don't understand the implications of holding it back. They don't understand they're going to pay a price for that, and it's not one that they will be happy with. We are never going to catch up unless we bite the bullet. So that's how I
Cool. Councillor Lachlan?
I'm quite concerned in terms of this conversation. So if councillors really felt this strongly about not underfunding depreciation, we should never have gone out with it in our annual plan. No, don't wave your.
No, I'm agreeing with you, sorry.
There's a massive risk, sorry.
Must read.
There's real, there's a whole lot of people out there. If we turn around tomorrow and say, and it's not necessarily the driver for this, why put it all, but we go around today, by the way, councillors decided you're going to pay 11.1, even though we've been using this number of 8, headline number of 8.6 for all this time. That's going to have a massive issue, I think, for us. I mean, if I was a rate player, and don't absorb everything as well as others can, I'd be like, what the, you know what I mean? It's like, that's, and in terms of, I agree, I mean, I was at, the session out at Wider. And yeah, we have a lot of citizens who, we need to bite the bullet, keep up with our things, and that's their worldview, and I've got no issue against it. I would say some people are in a better financial position to be able to pay that difference than others. So when people make, when they say, look, I'd rather bite the bullet, they're able to bite the bullet. There are others like the Mangakinos, so yeah, I'm like we should not have gone out with even discussing this option unless councillors generally were looking at doing it. And the only time I would have moved away from it is if we had like massive voting against it or something like that, which we haven't had. We've had some good strong voices and nobody's questioning the people who have said we should bite the bullet. I don't have an issue with that. But yeah, I mean, I supported going out there with this on the basis that the likes of Mangakino and other certain communities are having this double whammy of valuation increases and rates increases. So they're not doing 8.6, they're doing 12.5 or whatever. So that's just my view.
Cool. Councillor Weston and Councillor Shepherd.
Yeah, look, I was one of the councillors sitting around the table, the pump, everyone thought the world was going to end, and listening to economists and every other bit of information you could possibly glean to make that call back in the day. So like Councillor Shepherd, I'm worried about doing that all over again. There has been the chat about Three Waters perhaps kicking in a couple of years' time, and that may help us with this decision if we decide to use the depreciation option. But I also just need to go back to a comment that Sarah was looking into finance manager, and Julie may help me, I'm trying to think of wording, going out and resetting the rating amount that we charge to power stations and those bigger things. Will they, yeah, the differentials. So will that help us in a couple of years' time? Because those guys will be able to be rated instead of getting stuck on where we are now.
I think one of the drivers for the conversation around delaying depreciation funding was about the impact of the revaluation, and that under your current revenue and financing policy, you had little levers to pull to be able to support some of the communities that may be struggling to pay. So yes, there was a conversation that started around your rating policy, and part of that is around different but the driver here, or one of the drivers, was what can you do to be able to support that may struggle to fund, and this was one of the reasons. The other reason really was, and I just want to remind councillors that we're not the only council that are having this conversation. Many councils are going down this route because of Three Waters. They are saying, is it the right thing for us to do to fund depreciation in the context of reform? So it's been some of those reasons touched on this morning that obviously in your minds when you made the decision to put this in the annual plan, that was one of the ones that you haven't raised. So.
Julie, can I just ask just points of clarification in your previous councils? Did you always 100% depreciate the asset?
No. So
what you need 100% depreciation.
Yeah. So no. So I've been in the councils before where they haven't, and they were trying to phase that in. There was a few natural disasters that challenged that, but there are councils that don't fund 100% depreciation, or they fund it based on their renewal costs. So they do different things. I'm not sure how unique we are, because I don't have the stats, but I certainly know there's some councils that are 100% not funding depreciation in this annual plan coming up, and that's obviously the extreme of the curve. But other councils are looking at decisions like we're doing today.
Can I just ask, just roll, just ballpark figure, what implications for the rates next year would it have again?
So it's about, so it had an impact of, sorry, spreadsheet. So without it, we were looking at just under, the numbers might have changed, around 11%. Yeah, but with it, we've dropped it down to 8.6, which is around 2 million, just under $2 million worth of depreciation that we wouldn't fund. So we would have to recover that $2 million next year. So, so it's about 1 to 1.5% on additional rates right off the bat.
Can't spread that.
We were looking to spread it over 2 years, I think. Yeah.
So that'd be still 2.5% a year.
1 to 1.5 each year.
Each year, yeah. I think Danny next. Oh, no, you're all good. Yeah.
No, it was me.
Duncan, sorry.
Oh, okay, no, just a layman's comment. I mean, it's $2 million we're talking about. Yeah, and I agree with Danny. We've sort of, it's a bit late to turn around and change our minds, practically speaking, but we can, but it's no, well, no, okay, yeah, no, fine, but no, I mean, just commenting that we've got more than one pot on the boil. I mean, if that EUL thing goes off, we'll make 9 million, won't we? I mean, that's layman's terms. I mean,
under current policy that we need to pay in.
Well, I mean, I'm just, okay, layman's thinking, we make money there and we lose a little bit here. It doesn't seem that the end of the world to me, but anyway, that's it.
Councillor Taylor.
So just a couple of comments and a question, but on the back of what Julie said. So this was a topic of discussion at the Mayoral Forum a couple of weeks ago in Hamilton. And you're right, there are councils within the Waikato and very close to here who are funding zero depreciation. And there is a range. And if we were to go what is proposed in this, we would be still at the high end of funding depreciation within the collective of the Waikato that we, or Waikato and Bay of Plenty that we're part of. So we're still at the high end of that. My question is, and I know the discussion was held around Three Waters assets and what depreciation funding we set aside for that. So my question is, what percentage of our depreciation goes into those assets? Do we know, or can we readily find that out? Because that will have an impact in terms of what we have to catch up, because we lose that portion of it. And I know that's a gamble, but that portion of it disappears. So I put it in the spot for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to have a look at the number. It won't take me long to find the number out, but it disappears for only depending on when it goes live and if it goes live. Yeah, and it's been delayed a year. So if it had been going when they said it was going to go, then that would have been a saving grace for both years, I think. But now it's not so much.
Andrew?
Just to clarify that, my understanding of what's before you is deferring depreciation from this annual plan year and recover it in the first 2 years of the long-term plan. So according to the legislation that's being proposed and not yet passed, all those 2 years in which you'd catch it up, or this would still be in our annual plan anyway, so. Which is different from when the same plan went out, the deadline was gonna be 1st of July 2024, so maybe that's not.
Or you might have some more certainty by the time you have to make that decision.
Okay, all right. Selena, anything from your end, from your rural people?
Just about getting up.
Oh, gosh, Rachel's been
Hey, Rachel, I thought you get the first go.
No, she's
Turn the light on.
Around.
You even nodded at me and then.
Sorry, Selena didn't actually want to say anything, but.
I'm happy to speak. I'm happy
Yeah.
to let Rachel get ahead first because that's no problem.
It's going back a long way in
Yeah.
the discussion.
Remember what you gotta say?
Yeah, well, there's two parts to it now.
Yeah.
So, to Danny's point, I initially thought that this would be a really good option, that we would, just bring it back a little bit. So, and I was really interested to see how the public feedback came back, and it's quite overwhelmingly in favour of us doing it, yes. But once again, I wonder with, the comments and the submissions, whether they understand the implications of that. So, yeah, it might smooth the bump for now, but it might create a hill for the next 2 years, given that I don't think we're going to see inflation slow down. And I can see this being a bigger problem if we put it off. If we delay it, our increase could be, 15%, and then we have to add another 1.25. So that's my concern, is that I'm not sure all of the submitters understood the implications of this decision.
Okay. You, yeah, my view is I try and put myself in.
First home buyer, 2 kids, car in the garage, washing on the line. They are really, really struggling to pay those weekly outgoings at the moment, and quite often there's a deficit in their mortgage payments and what have you. And I'm not talking about intergenerational debt, and we're sort of kicking it down the road a little bit, but a bit like the fuel tax in Auckland, just a bit of short-term relief that people can see, hey, we're trying to do our very best for you guys. I know it's delaying it, but, and I really worry about our collection rates, and there's probably no one here from debtors, but, I believe a lot of people will be behind in their rates. I don't know what the percentages is, but no doubt we'll get that report at some stage. But, the people I talk to, they're really struggling. Then I talk to a lot of people that are in Fiji and retirement all over the place too. But I I thought it was a bit of a short-term relief. It was not a novel idea, but it was a new idea. I know we've been really good over the years at 100% depreciation. A lot of councils don't do that, so we've really, really not built up a nest egg, but we've done the job right. But it's been a short-term relief for our ratepayers, I would have thought, and along with Kirsty. But anyway, I'm happy to go with whatever suggestion Councillor Leonard.
Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Lachlan said as far as going out. However, upon a lot of reflection, we have suffered from that 0% rates. I think it's the definition of stupidity to do something again and again without learning the lessons of the past. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, there's a serious punch out there for absolutely everyone. But are we just going to multiply the impact next year and the year after and just dig ourselves a bigger hole? We created one. We haven't been able to make that any better. I just want to see us go further down the track. Sorry.
When we did the zero, it was right on COVID, and everyone was a unanimous decision then to give that same sort of reason now, give that relief. But in actual fact, the economy boomed. So that's why we got caught.
Okay, to that point, I would just suggest that we take into consideration some international perspective that the free trade agreement with China that was signed in 2008 comes into effect on the 1st of January. China stopped pretty much all of their imports from New Zealand into China, which will be hurting us a great deal across dairy forestry and a number of our export markets. I would suggest from looking, I mean, I'm not an economist, but if I was a person sitting in China and I was an importer, I'd be timing my imports for the 1st of January to make the maximum of that. So are we sitting in a dip at the moment that might come out the other side? Are we sitting with sticky inflation? We're not economists, but at the time that we made that zero rates increase decision, I recall multiple meetings sitting with economists telling us what was going to happen, and they got it dreadfully wrong. We've been told that we're heading into a recession, and we've been told that time and time again. I don't know, but I think there's a lot on the table that we need to consider. I'll leave that there.
Said my piece to a certain extent. This is just a question of clarification. So between Kevin and Jeanette and Julie, so for the councils that don't 100% fund their depreciation, how are they managing their future? Because obviously for other councils, they don't see the world ending like we do.
Yeah.
And I've been clear earlier that I think maybe we should have said 92% is being funded rather than 8% not being funded. But yeah, I'm just curious in terms of how the rest of the councils.
Sorry, through the chair. I remember we asked this question of Sarah and she said that they had to borrow. They had to borrow the money, and then, you know, a lot of councils are getting pretty close to their debt ceiling, you know, as a result. We're quite fortunate that previous councils have had foresight to fund our depreciation. So.
Councillor Greenslade and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Bishop. For an average Turangi home on the town side, we are talking somewhere between around 4 to 450. You know, $1 a day, less than $1 a day. And I did hear on the radio this morning the Gore Council with their $42 million debt going to 11.1 just to service debt. Home owning is an expensive business in this country, and it filters down all parts of our society. I can also tell you that the King Country Trust will be doing a distribution of $1 million in our district, which will relieve some of that, but that's in the Turangi area, not up here.
To individual household?
Yes, goes to everybody who's connected to the Lions Company. So it will be the home, the ratepayer as well as the resident majorities.
What sort of money do you mind if how much is it?
Well, we're not sure, we haven't decided.
Yeah.
We're meeting next week and next month, I mean.
So each household could get $1,000?
No,
$500.
probably maybe 100 to 200, something like that. But, you know, if your increase is 400 or 500, that's half of that.
Yeah, true.
So for my district, I could say that not great, but I think it's sensible. When you look back since the GFC, we've had the GFC and the downside of all of that. We've had COVID, now we're in a recession. I mean, you know, we're just doomsday merchants really, aren't we?
Feels that way.
We're just looking on the bad side of it. Nobody ever wants an increase. But I look at Turangi that has been on the sharp end of not having depreciation accounted for over the years, and I think it's a mistake. So I do think that the small amount that it actually is, I know it's not a small amount to everybody, but I could see other areas where actually for our people, I'd have to help.
Cool. Thanks, Sandra. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, obviously I hear, you know, I appreciate all the commentary and, you know, reducing or postponing the funding depreciation is a bit of a shock ending this year. But once again, getting back to the point about saving off the actual inevitable for next year or some consequent years, and there without trying to be clever about, you know, obviously, you know, there are mechanisms for rates reliefs, you know, for the ones way of working through that, you know. So I still maintain that, and I getting back to Danny's point, I hear what you're saying about going out with the looking at that potential doing that, but it is a consultation process. About 54% came back to the agreement for various reasons. It isn't a referendum, but it's just purely being open and transparent with the community as to where. So I still believe that it would be unwise to postpone it.
Well, just clarify again, Jeanette, if we do post, we do, what would be the difference on rates? If we do, yeah, we funded 100%.
I think the consultation document said that the rates would be 11.1%. Through the chair, I do have some answers to the questions that have been raised.
Yes.
So Councillor Taylor, in the June 22 year, our depreciation on 3 water assets was just under $9.2 million. So if you take 8% of that, that's $732,000 of depreciation that we wouldn't be funding. Of course, that's not actual depreciation, so it would probably be higher than that. That would be the 3 waters share of that depreciation non-funding.
I was trying to, sorry, I'm just doing the.
That's 40%.
So about 40% of our total infrastructure would be 3 waters. That was kind of where I was
Is that
angling.
what you're asking?
Yeah, so that.
9 million over 23 million, roughly 20.
So that's 40%. 6 and 3 waters. Okay, yeah, no, that was the question.
Councillor Westerman.
Jeanette, that's another answer.
Oh, sorry.
That's another answer, sorry.
Just one, you don't have a question over that. Okay, carry on, Jeanette.
Sorry, through the chair, this is the beauty of having those 3 people sitting there. Tony Wilkinson has said that there's not very many people behind in their rates.
Oh, good. Okay, so no percentage?
Yeah. Oh, no, she don't. I just got, there's not very many behind in their rates.
Oh, good. Is she listening?
No, those 3 are, so they would have asked the question. And yes, in terms of the other councils, they'd be, as you said, Rachel, they would be borrowing to do their renewals. They could also possibly be borrowing to cover operational. And but the best place to find the answer to the question is probably in their annual plans, which they'll either be consulting on or about to publish. So that will give us the answer of what they're actually doing.
Okay, thank you. Again, I think it's been pretty well canvassed. Seems to be very appetite to not do this. Still fund 100%. Didn't realise that the expenses of that, the advantages of that. Councillor Westman, sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to be a dog with a bone here. Because I really appreciate we've kind of gone out to the public with a bit of a solution and understanding on this. You know, have we kind of, I know it's all about consultation, but yeah, I kind of feel we've kind of committed to going down that track. And so I just want to go back, Jeanette, if you don't mind, that strategic property reserve. I mean, if we did what we had to, is there any way that in a year's time we can use some of that money to help with that rates issue in a year's time? Yeah, if
I guess so, but you would, yeah, I guess so, but you would still have the problem that for the following year, if you use it once, then the impact of that increase that you were covering is still going to be there the following year.
But taking the allocation, basically what you're saying, and transferring that. Make it an impact on the rates next year.
Yes, so.
I don't know if you can do that. Councillor Lachlan?
So just a question. So in terms of our reserves for depreciation, what's roughly the total quantum? Total amount right now in our reserves? Sure, reserves roughly.
Excluding the, I just had the annual. I've got 32 in my head because I think we were asked that question, but I've got a feeling that might only be depreciation reserves. So can I come back to you on that?
Sorry, can I just say something? So I've got to run, so I'm not walking out and disgust. No, no, it's, yeah, I appreciate what everyone's thoughts are, but I'm sort of with Dan on the fact that we went out with this. And so because we've got the majority of people that have come back to us as well, that's over 50% that also agree, what are we going to say why we've changed our mind? Because that's what we went out with, and then. Yeah, I know it's an option, but like it was our preferred option. So and the community agreed. And now
I wouldn't get hung up on that, councillors. You know, like we are forward-thinking council. We try and do different stuffs and different formulas, and this was a suggestion that is a possibility. But don't get hung on it because we've got to go with it.
Oh no, but why? Like the same thing. Why would we put it out there if it wasn't something that we had it? Appetite for. That was my own thinking. Just for future, if we're going to go out again, because I do understand we go out with things that we think are good for the community, then we get feedback, we might change our mind and go against the majority. I get that, but why would we go out with this if it was something that we would get?
Well, we were nervous about the figure. Yeah, 15%, 12 to 15%, which is untellable, but when you actually look at it now, the council now, it's about normality, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a number of councillors with high rates increases.
Oh no, yeah, unfortunately.
Councillor Shepherd.
So further to the question that was just asked, we've talked about the levers available to us currently, but what about the levers available to us in subsequent years, which is, I think, what you were getting at. So, we've got our rating policy, that's one lever. We've got funding reserves that I understand we have policy around and we can only use it a certain way, but is it within our long-term plan to amend some of those parameters so that we can soften the blow with funds for short payment of depreciation?
Yeah, I guess that was where I was looking at Jeanette. We're probably trying to do me three across the room. And Jeanette advised earlier that using your strategic property reserve would be against your revenue finance efficiency. And you need to, recollection of legislation is you need to actually advise the community. So it would be one that you would be looking at through the LTP. Doesn't help for your decision today, which is obviously particularly difficult. The other one I would say is, yes, you can make decisions that are against what submissions come back from the community, but you would need to be able to justify that in terms of new information. That's
Okay, so based on that, is it an option to short fund depreciation this year with an eye to softening the blow via another mechanism through the LTP?
You would be asking staff to investigate what those mechanisms are. Obviously, you have to make a decision.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Obviously, with the TL fund, you have to review your treasury management policy, because we previous subsidised rates for a while after the CDLB. So that was one mechanism, but not that I'm advising we do that necessarily. I'm just saying that it's been done before.
Cool. What do you reckon, Jeanette? Tell us what you think.
I agree with Julie. There's several policies that we review as part of the long-term plan. The revenue and financing is one of them, and it also that talks about the split between fees and charges and rates. And so we possibly have to have some honest conversations about that split to see whether we can change it to make it better or worse or whatever. There's also the treasury management policy. There's also our rates remission policy and a whole lot of impacts that has. So there are several policies that can affect what you're doing, as well as talking about maybe changing the purpose of reserves or whatever. But yes, you would have to consult on all of that.
Councillor Taylor and Councillor Park.
So, you should probably cover off what I was going to say. I think if we go with the reduction in our rates, we have to straitjacket our thinking we have to then catch that up through a rates increase in the subsequent 2 years. And that is not the only option or options available to us. And you alluded to a range of different policies across the full business of council. And there are other levers which we haven't put on the table, which we could pull. And simply, I think I'm not wanting to sum up the conversation, but what I'm hearing is if we don't do this, then the only option available is we have to split it over the next 2 rating years, and we have to halve it and have to catch up then. But that's not the only options available to us. And there are lots of other things we could do creatively over a longer time period, over less of an impact, and we could still provide the benefit to the communities who are hurting, the individuals within the communities who are hurting badly this year. So, and coming back to Danny's point, we went out in good faith, and I'm still of a mind that we can do this without digging a hole in which we fall.
Change your mind. Okay.
Oh, just through to what Kevin said.
All right, we'll go around the room. Sorry, Councillor Fletcher.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just an observation. It feels like we're quite positive in our frame of thinking when it comes to, things like, I won't bring up the issue that we discussed in conference yesterday, but, those types of investments on behalf of the council. Yet we look incredibly negatively on this, and I understand that comes from past, I wouldn't say mistakes, but decisions that were made that obviously we're feeling today. But I just found that really interesting. Yeah, we have a very positive and quite bold outlook on what the future of this council looks like. But then everyone just doom and gloom on all of a sudden when it came to this specific topic, which I found really interesting. But yeah, I just thank you, Kevin. It was everything you said was at the top of my mind as well. So, I just wanted to bring that up. I just found that an interesting observation as part of the council.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I hear what Kevin's saying. I agree. There is a mechanism, but for example, speculating conjecture, like for example, review look at the Treasury Management Policy TEAL Fund, and we perhaps, for example, subsidise rates for 3 years for a term. But that money you won't have the TEAL Fund reserves to do other things in the community. So there is others and overs, but I do take it as probably, appreciate maybe a soft landing this year, but it's going to, at the end of the day, it's going to be caught up somewhere, accountable somewhere. But yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Okay. Rachel.
Yeah, good point, Karen. You're right. But I guess to my thinking, some of these other issues that we're looking at also have direct benefits to the community, and the rates discussion is a direct benefit to households and people. So I'm looking at it slightly differently. But again, I sort of support, like everyone else, what Kevin said. I think we need to look at some alternative levers, and I'd then say that if that was a possibility, in short paying appreciation on that basis.
Councillor Lachlan.
This might be an unfair question, which may not get answered, but just from management's point of view, what's their feeling, for want of a better word, in terms of the achievability of doing those things? I get that, TL funds and things, people did a whole lot of work and effort to put those things there. We don't want to be dipping into those to avoid it, but just your general, is there opportunities?
Julie, you're on the spot.
You're not putting me on the spot. Look, I'm probably would be also saying that by the time we are having our conversations around our revenue financing policy and our rating policy, hopefully a bit more levers to pull around some of the communities that are hurting this year from the revaluations. So that would be one of the aspects, not from a funding perspective, but from the allocation of funding perspective. I think we want to look at. The other part for me is I would hope by the time we're having those conversations, we'll have some more certainty around Three Waters time. So those are not specifically answering your questions, Councillor Lachlan, but those are some things that are in my mind, which will give you some levers to make decisions on.
Thanks, Julie. Okay, Duncan, 92% or 100%?
Well, I have faith in the creativity of our accountants. So I absolutely.
Betting man.
I'm going for the, what am I agreeing with? I'm agreeing with the reduction in depreciation.
Councillor Taylor, you've mentioned yours before.
Oh, I'm going to Duncan on that.
Councillor Fletcher, same. Councillor Park.
I hear what you were saying, but I think, in the future, those creative thinking in the long term, I've been along to see the consequences of putting up this sort of stuff. But all that creative thinking could mean worked out the way much lower rate reduction in years 3, 4, 5 of the actual long-term plan, so.
Cool. Thanks, John. Thanks, John. Hi.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Christine?
Yes. Yes, to the depreciation.
Yeah, 92%.
Yes, and excuse me, it's Leela Andrews' funeral, so I'm just shooting up to Sam Andrews' mother. Passed away and it's her funeral at 12 o'clock, so I'll be there representing us. So be back.
Is that Nat?
Grandmother.
Grandmother.
So I'll be back as soon as that's
Okay.
over. So excuse me, apologies.
That's all right.
Yeah, I'm obviously supporting the reduction of appreciation. And I apologise if I've got a bit patient.
I think you're in.
Yeah, I'm worried about it.
I am
Very
too.
good.
I haven't, can I just say that I'm worried about it. I don't feel, I don't feel comfortable about changing my mind, but I feel like I have to do it, but I'm not feeling good about it. I think in the end, we're going to be sorry we did this, just like we were before, but we must do what we must do.
I just have done some figures while I've been waiting. People expect their rates to go up. For people in our area, we're talking an increase of probably, $53 to $58, and then 48 to 51, 51 to 60, 55, 45 to 55.
Every week.
Yeah. Yes, I know, but I went to Countdown last night, came out with one tiny bag, and it was $100, and there was nothing in it.
Yep.
Nothing in it. Yeah.
Councillor Lachlan, could I have the final words from you, please?
No.
Are you really you happy 92%? Okay.
I wouldn't say happy.
None of us are.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Campbell, we will leave it with our beautiful accountants. Sort out. Anyway, anyone that's selling their house, giving it to their kids this year, that'll be good. They can pay the extra next year. Okay, thanks Jeanette and thank you Julie for that. Isn't there a clear enough message, Kendall? Yeah, good. What's the next subject?
The next subject is moving into the capital program, but just given that Councillor Leonard's had to pop away and it is 11:45 and we're going to break for lunch, did you want to start or did you just want to come back at 12:30 and kick off?
How long do you think it's, what have we got after the capital program?
We've got some capital program discussions and we've got some discussions around funding and then the fees and charges. And sorry. Yeah.
I think we keep going.
Okay.
Keep going until lunch comes and then we can have
Okay. No,
a
that's
break. Yeah.
great.
Thanks, Kendall.
Sorry, let's find my pages. So as part of the feedback, sorry. As part of the consultation document, we did have an any other feedback category in there, and through that we've had quite a number of submissions come back about suggesting activities that we could do throughout the next financial year. What I did with that is I took those submissions and we went out to the rest of the organisation and just checked what projects had been suggested and whether they were actually already planned for the 23-24 year or whether they were something completely new to us. So in one of the attachments is a report around capital program submitter responses. And that just shows the capital programs that were suggested. It identifies whether they were planned or whether they aren't planned. And then we've had some staff respond to those to say, whether we should be looking at this through the LTP or whether there is an actual another mechanism, i.e. is it in some of them were roading things that NCTA contribute to the council. So we said we would continue to advocate in those spaces. So So I suppose where we're at is, in terms of all of that, the two decisions here are whether we do amend the capital program to reflect some of those projects that submitters have asked for that but haven't been planned, or we continue just to track on with the current program as we consulted on.
What's the number of plans, changes?
Yeah. I don't have the exact number, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'd have to do
That's right.
quick
We get up to
crunching on
lunch.
the exact number. On the number of responses to that question.
Oh, sorry. I
Yeah,
thought you
sorry,
meant-
no. And-
So, sorry, through the chair while you're looking, just, yes, first, so for me, we go through this quite strong, robust process in terms of stuff that goes in the annual plan, and Andrew's got us to take it to a higher level. So, I'm not I don't want to be predetermined, but I'm not expecting for us to add anything significant. So it sounds like there's just 3 or 4 or something. And I'm assuming we're just going to refer those to long-term plan process for some sort of consideration. Is that how it usually works? I'm just throwing it out there.
Yes.
Planning.
Yes, I'm just looking at Andrew, and perhaps I wondered if this one perhaps is one that we tackle after lunch, but if there's anything that's come through in the submissions that has made us want to change our capital works program, Andrew's shaking his head. So I think the advice from us is where there's been nothing in submissions that says actually we got what we went out for consultation on wrong. And though therefore we'd be looking at those projects that came through in submissions through the LTP process.
Yeah, so just use that section. Possibly the only thing there was a lot of commentary on was the Turangi Event Centre. But again, it's not, the way I see it in the project where it's at, it's not a question of the council making a decision at this point that would change the outcome anyway. It's purely a reflection of where the project's at and the process it's going through, which I don't believe there's any action to take.
And so much of the decision making was around, being able to deliver these projects. So if we're only just able to deliver what's in the capital expenditure program now, it doesn't make sense to add anything to it.
So I think there's perhaps 2 parts to the conversation. The first part of the conversation is there anything that makes you want to change your annual plan capital works program, and then the second part is how we respond to the submitters. I think that just again, if we can separate those two, the first part is today. The second part is around the submissions that have come in and what is the response or what is the action to follow on those. Some of them I can see just looking at the front page of the agenda or page 34 around actually advising or advocating to what the Kotahi. And if we perhaps separate that out, we'll deal with those when we're doing the responses to submissions.
So Campbell.
Oh, just one potential addition. I mentioned this a few months ago, and I know at Transport Town Centre, because I was requesting, there have been some submissions on it, requesting some funds be put aside to make some traffic improvements. There were some submissions on it, and I know there's a review report in your top drawer or something, which I haven't seen it or anything. Maybe it has some recommendations to do some stuff. To me, that would be something that could be added in if we. That's just a possibility.
We just asked Andrew. There was a quick look at that report that you've got sitting on the outside on your office desk. Is there any major capital things that you think that should be included?
So there's nothing what I would call major, because that wasn't part of the scope of the study. So the scope of the study was to go and look at what the minor improvements that could be made around town centre, if I'm correctly interpreting.
Signage and all that.
That's right. At this point, I don't see any barriers to us addressing those minor items as part of the other budgets that we already have. So that's where I leave it. I guess the subjectivity comes into what you define as minor and major. So in terms of the way we've interpreted it and asked the consultant to give us feedback on minor items within that scope, we're okay.
Councillor Park?
Yeah, just through the chair, we had a town centre Taupō steering group meeting last week, which was the last of meetings of that steering group, and the budget's pretty tapped out. Signage is coming, overhead lighting's coming. The project isn't quite finished yet, so I believe and wholeheartedly support staff in that the project still has some tweaks to be put in place and some cool features, and we should just probably wait and see.
Oh, the overhead lighting, is that correct?
Correct.
We've got money.
And signage.
We've got money to still do that.
Yes, we knocked out a couple of other things.
Andrew's nodding his head.
We delayed a couple of things like the Clocotier sort of piece of artwork and stuff around the northern gateway. We have delayed because we don't know what Countdown are going to do and why put new stuff in when Countdown is going to be a demolition site.
It's more the lighting I was concerned
that's
about.
happening.
What I was led to believe that we didn't have enough money to do the lighting.
Yeah.
Sponsor's sitting next to you, so I might pass that to Julie because I wasn't across that.
Sorry, Julie. Might be sidetracking here, sorry.
No. Well, it's put a little on the spot because we've got a meeting tomorrow to confirm. If we don't, my proposal was to actually deal with that through unbudgeted expenditure, because what we wanted to do was take 5, line up the report that Andrew has, which I haven't had the chance to see yet, and just make sure that when we came to you, we were coming to you with a full picture of this is the amount that it would take to finish the project, because I agree, we want to make sure that we finish it, get it to a standard that's expected by the community. But when we do, if there is some other stuff, we want to make sure we cover that off. So come to council once.
You'll come and see it.
Oh, no.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, just a question, Andrew. I mean, I put forward that notion for a potential roundabout at Roberts for Rupehu. Is that the sort of minor thing that would, if it's decided to do that could slip in there, the existing budgets?
No, that's the sort of thing that's not, that would be major.
Oh, because I mean, what's a dollar amount for a minor? I mean, just that could slip in, so what, 50 grand, 100 grand, is that what? Is there a number?
No, so sorry, so through the chair, what I'd say is what we asked for feedback on specifically, and people haven't got this report because I haven't got a final copy. I've got an early draft, so it will make its way through. That what we asked for is directional signage and other signage that will assist people understanding the intent of how it's supposed to use. It didn't include changes in traffic control instruments such as roundabouts or islands or anything like that. So that was out of the scope of that review.
It could be a long-term plan thing, I think, Duncan, because last thing we want.
Yeah, okay.
Any more changes there? Yeah. Still trying to get rid of those last cones. Thank you very much. It's been 6
No, just
8 there. But yeah, that's the sort of thing in the couple of let it settle in, get some signage up, lights, and go from there. I think people are sick of the cones and changes.
No, okay, which is my understanding of the report, that it was going to at least look at some of those things, particularly, yeah, anyway.
But I think we're best to deal with it outside of annual plan if that's okay.
All right. So no change to capital works program. Go ahead with that, please, Kendall. Thank you very much. And what's next?
Sorry, just regarding, I think, fairly minor mentions coming after we'll go through submissions, but with the car park, the water wastewater program was delayed. We'll probably be told, has that been delayed because it became into one that we could do, or has it been delayed for other practical reasons? Delivering the that works program.
Anchorage, well, we're going to discuss the individual submissions later. That's a submission from Mr. Lander, wasn't it? Yeah, but it is a capital works.
It is.
So we discuss it now.
It was one of the ones identified in the consultation document as being delayed, because there's still some other works to be done to try and about.
So the submission was from the submitter that he wants that, wants it done now.
Yes.
So what's our feeling on that?
Yeah, he would like it prioritised.
Huh?
He was seeking that it be still be prioritised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where?
Through the chair, the 2 Mile Bay car park is in conjunction with stormwater project and project, which is planned for the approval, so 2025.
Okay, so,
That
so it makes sense to do it at the same time, is it the same thing? Yeah. So we're happy just to do it when those maintenance or other upgrades are done? Yeah, true. Okay, so we'll leave that in there as the plan works here. Anything else?
Look, I think we'll have a more detailed discussion when we get on all of the submissions.
Yeah.
It's kind of more to come.
So what do we need to discuss after lunch?
After lunch is funding. So we've had 3 submissions. There were some applications for funding. You also heard from Wairua Trust, the White River Trails, and by Taupō. So there were a few of those that were seeking funding that came and spoke to their submissions as well. We've also got the discussion around fees and charges.
Okay, so there's 5 things.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, we'll have a break.
Okay, so so just mentioned before the break, through submissions, we did have a number of submitters seeking grants or funding. Just having worked through that, there are some responses in the report. However, we just wanted to work through these requests and just individually on some of the key ones there. So the first one on the list was we heard from the Wairua Community Trust, who they're still in the process of setting up the building and getting themselves set up ready to start operating the community. They have sought $120,000 for the first year, for this year of the annual plan. And the staff response to that is that we should provide the $120,000 to them to help continue setting up and be able to deliver those services to the community as anticipated. One of the aspects that we need to work through there is our current grant and partnerships policy does say that we won't make any funding decisions through the long-term plan or annual plan processes. While we can still do that, we just need to recognise the reasonings for that and make reasons for that to satisfy Section 80 of the Local Government Act, which allows us to make departures from those policies.
Sorry.
Yeah, can you do it without using this pathway?
Do you mean giving them the money?
Yeah.
Right, elsewhere?
No, is there any other pathways where we don't have to message our policy to get to this place?
I don't believe there is.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Greenslade. Councillor.
I was a little concerned when I listened to the presentation from Katie Noble. It struck me that the trust has known for a number of years that they're going to be in this situation, and where are the tenants and who have they got lined up? I was also very concerned when I heard 55,000 for a general manager. I manage the Turangi Community Centre, the health centre, and I do that myself. Manage tenants and organise leases, and I do it with good professional help. I can't for the life of me see why they would need a dedicated general manager to do that. The trust itself seems to be quite capable people, and I would be thinking that they would be employing the services of professional people here in Taupō. Do we know who they've got lined up at present for tenants for the building?
My understanding from the submitter on Monday was that they don't have any tenants signed up at the moment. I believe that's still working.
Well, that is a concern to me. I do know that one particular social service organisation went to them and said that they were far too expensive, and went and took premises elsewhere in Taupō. I think there's a lot more questions to be asked of these people. I don't like the idea of fronting up to council and ask $20,000, thank you very much, when you've got a district like this and they're supplying social service. And the other thing that concerned me, and I did mention at the time, was they have this discriminatory practice of deciding who's going to pay market rent and who's not going to pay market rent. You either pay the rent, and that's the rent, or you don't. That puts them in a very, very awkward, difficult situation.
Just before we go to Councillor Lachlan, I think a clarification coming from the Deputy Mayor there.
So I can tell you that not only have they got full tenants, there is a waiting list. So irrespective of what you may believe there to be no tenants to move to the building, that is not the case. And the not-for-profit I'm involved in is a major tenant, and the whole basis of this is that those who are going in there are paid not market rent, but there is a flat, whatever the discount is, it's applied equally to everybody. So whoever was speaking to you that said it was too expensive, my response to them would be, good luck finding cheaper elsewhere in town. Well, good on them.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Just in response to that, if they're fully tenanted, then why are they asking us for $120,000?
This is for the General Manager.
Well,
That was for an administrator.
Oh, that's the
Oh,
administrator.
that's the administration.
And it was reduced to 30.
But still, it's
Yes.
the same like in the fully tenanted. Why are they asking?
Councillor Park and then Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. I've got some similar concerns around this. I completely believe in the concept of Waiora House, but I think that it needs to be brought into the 21st century on how it's being run. And please no one jump down my throat when I say this, but I'm just wondering if we need to sort of look at it differently. That, I mean, it is a council facility that we own. Do we need to have a landlord in there if there's going to be a manager and an administrator? Do we not have someone, instead of giving 120 to the trust, I mean, it's better just to put someone in there that is a council employee and have the trust just look after the grants, the social grants and things like. I know this is a very sentimental thing for Taupō and it's part of the fabric of our communities, but I just wonder if it can be done in a more efficient and smarter way. And I know how much attention and passion that the trust have, particularly Chris Johnson, but I just don't know if this is the right way because we seem to always be putting our hand in our pocket. And I know that it's about like social services are really important under the full wellbeing or the 4 pillars we sit around, but yeah, I just wonder if we're doing it the smartest way.
Councillor Lachlan and then Councillor Rankin.
Probably just agreeing with Anna. I mean, I don't know the background. It just appears like we've spent all our focus, all our time into building the building, and then we haven't thought about the rest of it. And yes, there's pros and cons in terms of bringing things in-house or not. But yeah, so I think there's an immediate issue though, and do we need to put some cash in right now? We do need to consider the signal. We don't think we'll be in a place to fund things in the future. So, you know, if you need an administrator, that should be part of your rental charges. Otherwise, you don't. Yeah. So it should be, for want of better words, self-sustaining, I would think, including funding depreciation. Yeah, that's my place. I'm sort of strongly in line with Anna. So I think there's the right now is the money, and then the follow-up conversation. And if the staff are saying they really do need the money they've got no money in the bank, because is that what they're saying, or they just don't want to touch their own money?
Follow-up conversation always happens with the partnership agreements. So yeah, that's a long-term plan thing. Yeah.
I think the general manager thing has come from someone they met. I've never met him, but I think he think he ran the centre in Whakatane and he did it really incredibly well. It was very active and it was self-sustaining, and I think they've got the idea that if they get somebody like that, it's going to be all right. I'm worried about it too, but what I'm even more worried about is we've built a very expensive building and it cannot be a white elephant. It cannot. So if that means that we have to step in and do something differently, we're not being recorded, are we? Yeah. No, I don't take to that back. I think we have got to do whatever it is we've got to do to make it successful, and it can't go on for like 2 or 3 years and just dribble along. We've got to hit it hard.
Councillor Shepherd?
Yeah, I've got very similar concerns, especially given that it's sort of my area. I run a similar sort of hub up at Totri Point by myself. So I'm struggling to see this governance structure top heavy with all this extra cost and necessity around that. And saying that, it certainly does need some direction, clearly, whether that's a general manager at 120,000 per annum as well as an administrator. I'm not sold on that. But we've got to do something, because I agree, it can't just sit there. Needs to work.
Yeah,
my view is fantastic building. You know, it's a real going to be a landmark Taupō. Like you, good thing. I'm happy with advancing the money on a short-term basis, just to get the thing up and running. Have someone up there. G'day, how are you? You want to hire a room? Yes, no. You want to hire this, or get some money coming back in from the place? You know, it needs a better than administrator to kick it off, get the thing flowing. And I know Kevin's done a lot of work in a lot of the institutions that are going to go in there. It's going to be a work in progress, but let's get it up, looking shiny, right person at the front door, give it a year, and then we have a review when we have to review the partnership agreement.
They did only ask for a year, didn't they? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say along the same veins was, sorry, through the chair, is that this is a one-off.
Yeah. What was the request?
If that goes ahead.
So yeah, it was 120,000 for this year, followed by a second year of 60,000, and then year 3 they break even. Given that we're focusing on this year of the annual plan, it would be the 120,000, and any other discussions, you know, we could look to have later. 120
includes the existing 55, whatever.
No.
So plus
an addition.
Yeah, plus that's right. It's for year 1. Then it drops
I
down.
need to just quickly.
Sorry, through the chair. So the Waiora Trust have got a partnership agreement at the moment.
Yeah.
They applied for $55,000. The council decided at the start of 2020, mid-21, to just put it down to 30 for a number of reasons. So that is to fund, that has funded part of the administrator. So that partnership agreement of that amount for the 3 years will finish next year. And so then you would imagine if the partnerships and grants approach remains the same, they would then potentially apply for funding for that administrator through that, but that is not guaranteed. So this would sit separate to a grant and partnership. It wouldn't be a grant, it wouldn't be a partnership agreement. It would be a separate amount that we would have to justify why we've done it outside of that policy. But it would be 2 different amounts until the end of the financial year.
Just to clarify, 120 grand are asking year 1. That is it?
Yeah, just yeah.
Then we revert back to the partnership. Yeah, we've still got a partnership agreement.
Through the chair, the partnership agreement would finish at the same time.
Right, Councillor Shepherd.
One more question. So do we understand the governance structure, and is there a business case to base this on? Nothing.
Who can answer that?
Oh, look, but yes, between myself and Councillor Weston, and so Councillor Weston's on the trust as the council representative, I've been involved in the build. I just perhaps just draw your attention to, before the council made the decision to start the construction of this building, there are a number of principles that were agreed between ourselves and the trust, and they were outlined in the letter, which is in your agenda. And it did indicate that we expected that we would be looking at supporting them financially to make a change in their governance structure and the way that they operated the building. This has been a while coming in terms of receiving their business case and their strategic direction. But we're here now. And from my perspective, in terms of some of the comments around whether we take on that role or whether it was or not, this is about getting them up and running and making quite a substantive change in how they operate the trust and how we expect them to operate the building that we've built for them. I think we probably need to be clear around our expectations that going forward, this is about setting them up. And the expectation, which was one of the principles we agreed to in the letter, which is that we expect them to be financially self-sustaining within an agreed period of time. And once they're self-sustaining, similar to other models, and the model is actually up in Tauranga, it's called the Hub. And that we expect over time that there would be a surplus, which would be used to support the ongoing running of Wilder House, all to be distributed within the social sector. So from my perspective, this is not a surprise that we got this submission. Maybe the timing is a little bit of a surprise because we're close to the end of the build. But we want this building to be successful because we've invested an awful lot of money, and it is our contribution to the local social sector. We do need to make sure that we work with them to make sure we achieve the outcomes that we're trying to.
Councillor Rinkin. Thanks, Judy.
That was the comment that I was struggling to make well before. I think that the board that sits there, and Chris is very professional and very driven and very passionate, that needs a strong commercial emphasis as well as a social emphasis sitting around the board. And this was a whole different game than it was before. So we need to make sure that the right people are in place to support Chris's passion and enthusiasm. I don't think we can just rely on people volunteering who've got an interest. I think along with that, we need some professional, experienced operations.
Councillor Williamson and then Councillor Greenstone.
Yeah, through the chair, obviously, following comments, obviously the trust is embraced, agree with those principles, and I think they need to be supported, obviously, get us up and running professionally. And I don't think we've had these conversations before. The council should be leading these these parts of like sponsored the council for our building. I believe we should be involved directly. Other funds that get these to go through trust. First, managed by independent.
Just to clarify, if State Contact Energy want to use the rooms, $100 or whatever, who gets that revenue? Trust.
Yeah.
It's actually their business too. Yeah. Councillor Greenslade.
Yes, I'd just like to ask who it was involved in that. Why is this administrator not part of the OPEX costs?
I think they've had a bit of pushback over the last 6-8 months from what the previous tenants have experienced, and it's all kind of new and everything's going to be different sort of IT and a booking system, that sort of thing. I just think there's a little bit of a delay with people coming on board. They've got people that need to get in there and use the premises, and I think it will open itself up for other users to come in there as well. I'm concerned about the general manager sort of position, and I would like some more breakdown on the 120. I think it's most probably a reasonable figure to get them through that first year and a half, but I'd like to have a little bit more detail on that. It just sort of was a final figure that popped up in the last few weeks for the close off of the annual plan submissions. And we've got someone driving this who's got his heart and soul. He's a business person, Chris, and I think the ultimate will be a good result. But I'm just not too sure we've got the operational side sorted yet. And if we had a little bit more time as the trust board to put that together, I think we will get there. We've got the right people around the table.
Councillor Taylor. No, nothing. Yeah, cool. Okay. I think there's a general consensus that a tagged amount should go forward. Taking on Councillor Greenslade's concerns, but I really want, yeah, it's going to be an iconic building. Not just all about prettiness, but to have someone there that's of some professional standard saying, yes, Mr. Contact Energy, you can have 2 days and such, like, there's a real revenue possibility for them there. So I'm sure but the 1 year only, help them get underway. Yvonne's got some queries about the actual contract, what I suppose that's their business, but I suppose you've got to pay 80 grand or whatever it is for a manager these days. But I want someone that, I don't want it to be a bloody whatever, but someone turn up, no one's there, doors locked, when we've just spent 8 million on the thing.
You have got a selection of a variety of tenants. They're not just administration people, these people working with communities and people that need some sort of confidentiality as well. So it's quite a difficult beast to operate. It's just not normal setup. So it was great that they went over and had a look at the hub just to understand how that was run. And I think ultimately, if we can kind of get it ticking away like that, that will be a winner.
I'll just line them all because I didn't know very little about it. But just in terms, are we saying that person would be there all the time? 40 hours a week? Oh no, I'm just wondering. Is this building not the sort of thing that you could give swipe card access? Does somebody to be there all the time? Electronic swipe card, PIN code.
First year of people coming to have a look and all that sort of thing. But that would be up to them to set the parameters. But I think in our advance of our funds, we would be saying to them, this is what our expectations are. Someone there's bright and shiny on a Monday morning and boom.
No, I suppose in this day and age, my labour costs are the thing. And
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah. So, excuse me, my understanding, this is not a meet and greet person. This is as someone who is going to design and build the entire operating model for the complex. It's not a receptionist. It's not an administrator. This is somebody, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone closer than I am, but my understanding is this is going to be the full operating both model and philosophy for that, leveraging off the hub in Tauranga. So it's more than just meet and greet and hi, how are you? This is way deeper than that. Yep. And how they do it is not our concern. That's detail. Leave them to it. I'm a little bit concerned that it's 120 grand over and above what we're already paying. However, given that this is to get across the line, get it up and running, get it established. Once it's running, my understanding and conversations I have with Chris reasonably regularly is that this will become a self-sustaining, even turning a small profit model once it's up and running. And yes, there are some issues with tenants, and that's the nature of the tenants you've got there who are reluctant to embrace change. But be that as it may, that's a hurdle they have to step over as well. It's just part of life.
Thank you for qualifying that, Councillor Taylor. Chinese is part of, I would like to think it was part of the description anyway. So, Councillor.
I'm happy to support this on the understanding that when Turangi comes and asks for support and help with these social services, that councils are mindful of that.
I think through just, with Kevin obviously having a GM there is the operating model. And if it's fully tenanted, there's a along with also capacity with that model to actually rental that basically up to commercial tenants as well from time to time, or on a set percentage of time allocated to that model.
So just through the chair, Sandra, like our venues, like the Great Lakes Centre, they have a community rate and a corporate rate for hire, so the same sort of thing.
All right. Okay, thank you, Kendall. Next
item. So the next one is by Taupō, and this is more just a clarification for staff. In their submission, they were seeking funding towards the 150,000 for their tourism infrastructure did I get that right? Fund application. So we heard on Monday from Bike Taupō that they weren't actually seeking any additional funding from council anymore. So I just wanted to clarify that. They weren't.
Didn't think so. Cool.
The next item is around, forgive me, the Tūrangi Festival. That happens in our Great Lakes Centre, and there was a number of submissions seeking support for council to fund the venue hire. Staff just wanted to outline that the Creative Taupō Fund committee, granted $5,500 towards that this year, so that has been covered. So yeah, we just wanted to let you know that $5,500 towards the actual venue hire for the event centre for that event has been dealt with through another.
It's up to any subsequent applications, I suppose, to keep covering. Yeah.
Just through the chair, while this is a nice to have, I just think that we could perhaps set ourselves a dangerous precedent if other groups were to find out about it. So I just, I'm a bit, it just worries me from that aspect about whether we're setting a precedence and then we're just not creating any revenue or way to pay.
How much do we fund Creative Taupō?
Yeah. In total, I think it's 30,000.
Yeah. I don't know if it's helpful, but a lot of the applications that are made to the community grants are for venue hire. So it may feel a little bit odd that they'll often apply for hotelier that then does come back through to our venues, but it's quite common.
Yeah, and Councillor Daniel.
I didn't have anything particular, just more around, this is not going to go away. So Taupinga, primarily funded by particular tour type organisations. It's all our schools for the district and some even further afield. Massive uptake by the wider community. But yeah, this is, and it's not limited to this. I think it's a range of things where we're going to have continue to have pressure on us to fund these things. I don't have an answer, but maybe just throw that back on the staff again, just to further consideration for in advance of next year.
So the reply will be just keep applying through the ground. Councillor Greenslade.
Exactly my point of worship. I think council staff should be supportive of them and make sure that the grant that goes in is actually able to go in and it covers that cost that they're looking for. It's the right process.
That was a topic we would be encouraging them to go through the grants process is probably what we're trying to say, because that's consistent across everybody that applies as opposed to.
But making sure that council staff are sitting beside them doing the applications.
And supporting them, but just very conscious about making sure everyone goes through the same channel.
There's a template there, obviously. So, cool. Thanks, Ken.
Moving on, Creative Taupō also, one of their submission points was around a staff member to help implement the arts and culture strategy. Our suggestion would be that this particular piece of work is considered through our LTP process. So continue to do that. Steve's putting away.
So my comment, that's great, providing we actually do that, because my concern is we have, as of now, two really good, really robust strategies, and if we don't put resourcing into it, although that's the chief executive's role, not ours, but if we don't resource it, they just remain really good ideas, really good plans and strategies. So yeah, thanks, Kendall, but just I'm really concerned that we do resource it eventually, both of them.
Through the chair for the arts and culture sits in my portfolio with Steve, and we've identified a staff member and already established a work plan for getting those heads into the LTP.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Taupō Leisure Marches have also sought funding towards their event at the Taupō Event Centre. I believe Steve has has been,
Leave the march.
Tell us all about the legend.
been involved, so I'll
Well, you've been involved.
just with some conversations and may have more detail on this.
Haven't they marched?
What year were they formed, Steve? And what's the ratio between male and female?
Oh, no, this is very female dominated, yep.
This one came to me and I encouraged them to come through the annual plan.
Aussie Club.
No, Taupō Wine Club.
Okay, what are they asking for a venue hire as well?
So ultimately, they've questioned an increase in what they've paid previously to this year's event. This is an operational matter. There is an event facilitator dealing with it. Previous years, they've had the use of one space at the event centre and paid a community price. This year, their request for space increased to multiple areas up at the event centre over multiple days. There's a quote that's been put together. It has used commercial numbers as opposed to the community rates, which has elevated that number as well. But ultimately, you can't compare last year's charges with what they've requested in an application this year. And the instruction is from the event facilitator to reach directly back out to the marching group and reconfirm what their requirements are.
What sort of dollars we talking?
Last year was about 1,400. This year, I think the quote was for about 2,800.
So, and just noting too that this is the reason for the size of this event, where they bring all these different marches from around out of town. So again, you go through a lot of things in terms of events, but these smaller ones too, I think, bring a lot of benefit from very smaller.
Could we direct them to create a Taupō to look at funding, because this is the same sort of thing. We're going to set a precedent. So
More a sport.
Sorry?
More a sport.
I've been to this marching thing.
It is
Gonna hate sport.
It is a sport, absolutely. I see the ladies out there and they're marching.
And or the East Rural type of fund, yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, if we're treating everyone equally, then we're directing them to grant funding, aren't we?
Yeah.
Exactly. So 3 options here they could apply to.
Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Steve.
Cool.
The next one on the list is, I think, Joni Young. And again, it's just clarifying that staff have been in touch with her regarding the Taupo connector. And she had requested that some funds be included in the annual plan to ensure that the Taupo connector was going out to the AC baths. So she's been working with Claire Charlotte on that to make sure that.
Not go to the AC baths.
I believe that it did stop due to some funding or resourcing. And now there is funding back in there for, I think, 2 days a week that it goes out. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, so,
yes.
Yeah, cool.
Just wanted to tick these things. And the last one on the list was the Waikato River Trails. We heard from them on Monday, and they're very thankful for what they do currently get. They were, however, seeking particular support for about 480 metres of new track to join the lakefront to their existing trail. The amount they identified was between 10 to 30k, depending on the finish. Similar to the Wairua House Trust one, making this decision would not be consistent with our grants and partnerships policy. So what we are recommending is that staff continue to work with them and find a way that we can help support this initiative.
What do we give them there?
30,000 annually.
30. Asking for an increase.
They're asking for a one-up, just a one-up
What
support
are you
for that.
suggesting here? How do we get around that? Sorry?
With that staff continue to work with them and find a solution to help them.
That was arranged.
We think there's a range. Yeah.
Okay.
But probably not today. So
Yeah.
you ask us to deal with it.
Okay, so we're comfortable with that, council, staff decision?
Yeah, that track was it wasn't within road reserve, was it?
I do believe it was with road reserve.
Was it within road
It's
reserve? Oh,
it's an existing.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's coming down.
It's from their existing trail down to the lakefront, so to connect those two, and then it provides a full connection through to the northern trails.
Okay, now are we happy with that decision? Meanwhile, encouraging them, they're doing a fantastic job, and it's a, it's a lifesaver to Mangakino, so, we can try and help them facilitate funds, we'll do that, yeah. I.e. J Swap, giving quite a bit of, sponsorship there. We use him on various jobs, so, yeah.
Oh, just interesting. If we build a gravel track, is that what it is? Gravel track on the road reserve. Well, then that's our asset, and we've got to maintain it. So, isn't that sort of
The
something?
intention was necessarily that we'd be the constructor, but we'd be looking to find some funding, or to help them to find funding. So,
They maintain their own tracks.
Oh, okay.
Even though technically it could be on our land.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we don't just thinking aloud here. I don't know if it's a few minutes, but when you're maintaining or doing their work on the road reserve, and there was an incident, someone gets hurt or this or that. I mean, we don't really like other people maintaining stuff on the entry.
Most of the tracks that we're talking about are not exclusively on road reserve, so it's a bit of a different area.
Okay.
Also, the management agreement we often have will define their roles and responsibilities now, so it's a bit different from just road reserve without a agreement.
Okay, so it's no. All right.
Cool.
Oh, so that brings us to the end of the funding section. So the next part on the agenda is fees and charges. So we'll be out with a number of changes to fees and charges this year on the 23-24 year. So just stepping you back, as part of the long-term plan 21 to 31, we adopted 3 years worth of fees and charges. Through the review of those this year, there were only 10 or 11 that we had suggested were areas where we suggested some changes. Some of these were increases and some were also decreases. We did have quite a bit of feedback on the various ones. Staff have recommended that we do adopt the changes as suggested. I can take any question.
What do we know exactly what the major changes were?
So we
What's the major? Yeah, it's a dog. What's the dog situation?
Oh, so the dog we covered. Yep, dogs were sorted earlier in May. We adopted those fees. They were pretty much unchanged. They were unchanged from what was adopted bar one in 2021. This year, the key, I suppose, the key ones that we've had feedback on are the solid waste, looking at landfill increases. We've also, one of the larger changes was around the building consent authority administration fee. So that was due to increases from our supplier, and so needing to pass that on to those particular users.
Table tennis club wrote to me. Table tennis club. About the storage of the tables, doubling the charge. Where is that one?
No, I wasn't, and I don't believe that was one of the ones that we actually consulted on. So we didn't consult on every single change. We only consulted on ones that we were particularly changing that had already been adopted in 2021. So I will grant that it is a little bit confusing, the process of fees and charges. So yeah, that we've itemized everything in the report and through which ones we did go out and consult on.
We're going to get caught on like this is the last time. Numbers of dollars. Yeah. So there's nothing there that you can see. Yeah. Councillor Green's plate.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the things I've noticed lately, when I use my credit card, I seem to be charged 1.8% on the use of the credit card. Does council make a charge to people for using their credit card?
Jeanette's got a hand up.
Through the chair, currently we do not, because our current systems won't let us account for it very well.
Okay.
That's not to say that we would be rolling it out in the future. We did charge online, and we used to not accept credit cards at our customer service centres, but with the advent of COVID, we had to make things as easy as possible for people to pay. So we had to go to contactless and everything like that, and we haven't reverted back yet.
And how do people feel when they get that surcharge? You got to press the button twice, eh?
It depends on the choice.
Pain. Yeah.
If it's a small cafe or something, I certainly don't mind.
Don't mind.
But when it's some big outfit, I have to say, I go, really?
Yeah.
My card in. But it's 1.8%, which actually is pretty much 2%, which can be quite significant on some accounts. Yeah.
I don't want to tap and go, but then you go, hey, they come back. You can't just tap it now. You got to.
No, and so
Press yes.
I am kind to check, press check account if they do that, to be honest. I do think, oh, okay, they've asked me, right? They can get it.
Restaurants, they have the same thing,
Yes.
tips.
Yes.
In-person tip. Anyway, sorry, Ken, I was sidetracked.
Riveting conversation.
Councillor Taylor.
So while we're right down in the weeds then, I know a really significant reduction on the private pools. I'm assuming we've done the sums on that from 26 down to 15, and that's to make use of that. Is that the highest point we believe that will keep people going, or we go higher? Because that's a significant. Well, most of the rest are incremental, but that's the only one that jumped out. And I note there were some submissions on that, and not all particularly favourable.
Yes, yes, so we, as part of one of the fees that we proposed to reduce was the private sparkles up at the AC bars. So it was, I think, $26 and it's been reduced down to 15. Steve?
This is per person.
This is per person.
Have we had no takers of the private?
30 minutes.
We spent millions of dollars for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's happening with the private?
So it is for an hour. So it's for a total of an hour, which obviously allows them time to move from upstairs, downstairs, get changed, get into the pool, get out of the pool, get out of the area. So I guess if you could change really quickly, you're getting close to 60 minutes of relaxation time. So it's $25 per person. But a minimum of 2 for safety reasons, because the pools are private. And if someone was to have some form of incident in there, we have no way of acknowledging that. So, yeah. So the feedback from previous elected members has been the price point when we set it after the completion of the works was too high. The usage, the numbers would indicate we haven't seen the pools being used as we were pre the redevelopment. And the proposal to drop to 15 is a way of increasing usage in those pools.
Is that honeymoon pool too, is it? No.
That's the Brett's. Hey, David.
Oh, sorry. Just checking it.
I'll just one question through the chair. Because I always thought it was, you say 1 hour, you give them an hour, but I don't know, I seem to recall it was, it sort of specified 30 minutes. But that's my interpretation.
There's an in and out time, so they're blocked on those hours, so there's a change over time.
No, I'm just saying, I always interpreted it that you were paying $25 for 30 minutes, and that was pretty much it. That's how it read to me.
So what is $15 get you an hour or 2 hours?
In and out within the hour.
Well, I know I wouldn't pay $50 to use them, but I would pay 30. And a bit like the rates reduction, we've gone out and consulted on this. So, we have to be prepared to go with it, don't we? Yeah.
I think there can be a headline in the paper too. Council reduces costs.
You would have photo of you, Stephen.
Theory 8.6 of the text.
I think we're going to have the opportunity to see if the total revenue increases by the reduced charge. And if it's an issue, we can sort it out there, I'm sure. But I'm quite keen to keep progressing.
Councillor Greenside.
Yes, Your Worship, there was a submission by the Turangi Co-Governance Committee about charges on the tutor forms. Are we going to discuss that at a later date, or is that to be discussed now?
So that was in the full submission summary.
Yes.
But we can discuss it.
No change.
I've just see if I've got those, because I've got some data and stats. There is a financial cost to doing.
Through the chair, we already subsidise everybody who walks through the door by like $30.
There's no charge under 5, though.
We do it here.
I was going to say, if we're going to do it there, are we going to do it up here?
Do you want me to talk to it? Yeah.
So like.
Oh, yeah, we might as well talk about now. Councillor Greenside.
Thank you, Worship. So the thinking behind this is that Turangi children are the only children in the district who do not have direct access to the lake. And their options, if they don't swim in the tutor pools, is the river. Touchwood, we've not had any major incidents that I'm aware of with children, although we have had a number with adults recently. From a councillor's point of view, I think my attitude would be that I would encourage staff to see if they could find sponsorship for this. Because one of the things that I have noticed, especially when I'm there during the summer, which I'm always there during the summer, that it's visitors who use the turtle pools and not our children. And so you will find that you'll get a really good turnover of people using them, but our children are not using it. And that seems an awful shame to me, particularly as Councillor Park says that we do subsidise it to a reasonable level. I think we should subsidise it to a level that our local children can use it. It would be financially impossible for most families in Turangi to use that pool probably more than once a week, which seems a real shame, particularly over the summer months. So I know that one of the power companies did used to sponsor certain things about the pools. But perhaps in view of what's been going on elsewhere in the district, it might be prudent for us to go and ask them to sponsor something in Turangi itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the number. It's all about the numbers, but I sort of like to voice support for that as a water baby myself. But and it's not unprecedented, of course. I mean, Manukau City used to have that whole thing. School, well, the whole of Auckland Council does now. I think it's the age of 16. I think. I mean, it's not unprecedented, and I don't particularly think just because it's in Turangi, that means people are going to be clamouring at the door to have. Well, okay, some people will clamour at the door to have it here. There'll always be some, but I personally don't see that as completely unthinkable to have one part of the district separate working operation facility than another. And in terms of the sponsorship, yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I mean, I can think of being in the pools in Westport, and I think their whole facility was sponsored by the local coal company. I don't think they're doing so well now. But so maybe that sponsorship deal's fallen through. But yeah, that would absolutely be a good PR for someone, I would think.
Councillor. Oh, yes, you think, I understand the sense exactly. I think obviously that precedent, and I think Steve will come up with some numbers, I think, in terms of actually how roll out. But Taupo is also, I think, here to also some social economic challenges to our society as well. So discussion.
And actually, that's what I was about to say. I think whatever we do, we have to be consistent across the district. So if we're going to consider this for the turtle pools, which I think is a good idea, we do have winter time where our children can't swim in the lake. So, you know, we've got the same problems up here with low socioeconomic families who wouldn't get people once a month, let alone once a week. So if we are going to discuss this, I think it needs to be a district-wide, look, rather than just one town, one area.
So we already have a differential because Mangakino is free. So if you're going to say consistent, so it's already free in Mangakino. So it's not an apples and apples comparison.
And different facilities too, yeah. Jeanette, have you got better numbers than Steve?
I'd just like to bring your attention to the revenue and financing policy, which addresses this. So the Mangakino pool is funded by fees and charges 0 to 15%. The turtle pool is 5 to 15%, and the AC bars is 35 to 45%. That means the revenue from fees and charges needs to be within those parameters. That's what I presume we're bound by currently.
Stephen, what's it going to cost us?
Sure, through the chair, $25,027 over the last 12 months of revenue gain from 6 to 15-year-olds from the turtle pools. But so there's a couple of things in that point, and Councillor Grinsay. So our price points in the pools are staggered across the district, so it is a lower rate for entry to the turtle pools as it is to AC bars, so there is a small offset already there. We do operate the contact swimwear program every year to our school age, or certainly primary age school children for the purposes of learn to swim at no cost. So all the schools down the southern end of the lakes do enjoy that facility too. We, again, Jeanette has just mentioned the fees policy or structure that we're caught within, and certainly we can have a discussion about that, but those price points we feel have been reflected in use in that space. The point about access to Lake 2, pick it up, absolutely no direct access for the southern lakes, but ultimately too for our rural communities in the area, the same could apply to them as well.
Yes, I absolutely hear that, and I think that the last point that I made is that I would like to see staff go and talk to Mercury and Genesis and whoever else is in that space. These power companies have got a reduction in their rates this year. We're well aware, and it might be a good way for them to contribute back to the community.
Yeah, good point. Contact Energy do.
And contact, yes. Well, there's 3 of them. Contact.
Yeah, so they are contributing about $250,000 through the contact swimwear program as it stands. We are very fortunate.
Genesis used to be a sponsor down there, and they are no longer. So I don't know what happened there. And as far as I know, Mercury are not sponsoring anything. I don't. Does anyone know? No, not.
So for a kid wanting to learn to swim from Tūrangi,
it's 2 weeks.
What is the charge if they come in the contact
free
swim program? Free. Right, Jeanette, you had your hand up again. Mercury?
Oh, I just wanted to say that Genesis used to sponsor the turtle pool. That's why it was called PJ. I think it was because it was a finite period, and we also so they supplied the power, and we went into a government contract where we went with our best option, which for that area cut them out of the they didn't get the contracts. That may have had something to do with them withdrawing the sponsorship.
That's a very good idea.
Okay. So the question was if there was no charge or not. I think the feeling is that we want to sort of.
I would just like to say that we didn't actually specifically consult on that aspect as well. It was a request. And as with some of the other conversations with funding, staff can look at these things through the long-term plan with the revenue and financing policy. So that's still an open conversation to have that process.
What is the admission charge to go into Turangi pools?
$350.
So the 2 years, thank you, Kendall, and that's actually a really good idea. So I might go back to that group and say to them, let's look at this for the long-term plan, and let's see if we can't do some work ourselves in the space. Because as Councillor Campbell said, Auckland and Wellington have done this for many, many years. And I specifically think of the school holidays, you know, when there's kids hanging around there, just to skate. Like, yes, we've got the new playground, but I'd like to include this one.
Cool. Thanks, Kendall. Next. Thanks, Steve.
So I suppose we just need a decision around those fees and charges, whether you are happy with the staff recommendations, and then we'll craft up our resolution, but whether we could just get an indicative.
I'm going to see the marching girls.
I might.
You want me to? Who knows? Danny.
We'll get in trouble with it. I'm happy to support the fees and charges as well.
So as proposed, please. Thank you.
Nick. Nick can't get away not saying anything.
No, I've sat there quietly for 2.5 days. I just felt the need to say something. I just wanted, I guess I just wanted to say a few words to wrap up this process in terms of the deliberations. Well, you've obviously gone through it and given us a substantive direction on the crucial issues, and that's been incredibly helpful. The next step is for particularly Jeanette and her team to go away and actually shape up what do the finances look like for the annual plan, so we can bring that back to you at the end of June. I'm really conscious that there were other things that came through in the submissions, and if there are any of those that you want to talk about that might have a financial impact, and today is the day to talk about those. What we will do on the 6th is we'll come back with all the other bits and pieces that people have submitted on, where we're providing information about how we can help them out or where we would direct them, but those are not expected to be financially impactful decisions. So if somebody's raised something and you think adding it in or taking it out could have a financial impact, it would be really good to talk about that today. And I guess the last comment from me, and I know Andrew's had an offline conversation, but I just wanted to make sure you're aware as we go into that financial preparation work. There's been some conversation around our solid waste contract and the fact that it's going to cost more in the coming financial year, somewhere in the region of about 500,000, although that's still under negotiation. That's roughly what, about 0.5% on rates, 0.75% on rates. So the team intends to build that into the draft annual plan financials. So you will see that as part of that package at the end of the month.
So with that solid waste, that's the existing service we're talking about, not the bins.
Correct.
The bins are long-term plan.
Correct. Yeah, but we just didn't want you getting a surprise with that being added in at the end of June.
The Pukawa submission.
I've got a list.
Oh, yeah, Pukawa submission. So obviously that's investigated. That's a thing. Nothing we have to do straight away.
Yeah, I suppose with the Pukawa submission as well, is our parks team had noted that there would need to be some conversations with local iwi and hapu around that as well. So with Pukawa, I believe that Tony and the team have already been discussing not solutions per se, but steps to start to mitigate or remedy what's going on in that area. I suppose similar to other projects that we consulted on where there are constraints, conversations, design work and things like that, those are probably involved in that particular project as well. So I'm not sure that we would get to a solution within the next financial year, but definitely I understand that staff will be taking steps to try and ascertain what needs to be done to resolve that.
That will be in our response to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're requesting now, Nick, is any final scenarios that we've got to discuss all the submissions yet, which we'll do at the next meeting. But is there some now that you need to chuck in or debate?
If there are financial implications in responding to those, we've gone through them, and from our perspective, our response is is going to be a mixture of providing information so they understand the situation better, or talking about who else can help them. Maybe it's directing them to another agency. And as a result, we're pretty comfortable. We're in a place where we can respond to all those submissions. It will be really good for you to make sure that our responses align with your views. But as I say, if there's anything that could have a financial implication that you've picked up through submissions, like Bukawa, then we would like to have a chat about that today.
I'll start with the hard one, which is the underpass under State Highway 1, which has been a perennial problem for generations now. I had a conversation with Andrew and he said, well, underpasses are no longer used. And really it's probably time we got rid of it, and the solution, 21st century solution, would be an overbridge. Now, that obviously has financial implications, but possibly not for us. But certainly I think it's time that we started having that conversation and keep the Turangi people informed of that, because the more you encourage tourism and people to come and stay there, the more you're going to need that underpass. We are divided by State Highway 1. That's our town, half there and half there. And we can't have it so that people can't have pedestrian access. So I want that to be on people's staff's radar, and going forward, I want a solution for that. That's time for a solution. Sorry?
Did you find the MOU?
Well, that was a good story, wasn't it? Someone dreamed up. Gosh. Quick thinking.
Might as well respond to that one straight away.
Yeah.
Andrew, have you got the sweepers out?
Okay, through the chair, so I think there's a couple of different items in there. One is, what I'm hearing is there's some more strategic issues around Turangi associated with infrastructure that we don't own and have limited control over. So I'm suggesting perhaps those aspects might be taken up and looked at as part of a long-term plan project. What could infrastructure affect the long-term aspirations of the Turangi community? Something like that, perhaps, that I might suggest. More tactically around the MOU, I have found the MOU.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's true. What's the date on it?
Who signed it?
There, it hasn't been signed. It's a draft MOU. The reason that hasn't been signed is both of the infrastructure officers who looked over that had serious concerns about what it stated in terms of our obligations. Therefore, it hasn't been signed. I'm looking into that now. I just received it today.
Well
I'm
done.
looking into what that means and what the implications are, whether those concerns are still valid. So I'll be able to come back on a tactical note in regard to the. And I just want to qualify my comment, which was general in nature about underpasses and overpasses from crime prevention through into the design perspective. It wasn't in response to that specific matter, and I invite you to take that into, as I said, a wider conversation around national infrastructure that affects us.
I certainly agree with your attitude of 20th century's problem. A solution is to 21st century problems is not a good look. Yeah, moving forward.
I thought we might have all maintenance carried out by elected members.
Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. I've been told before not to do that.
Has anyone ever been into a nice subway? You know, there's subways all around the country. They're all.
It's completely divided by State Highway 1, and then someone else is responsible for it. It's a nightmare, isn't it?
Just needs a regular maintenance program.
Yeah. But that's number one.
What's next, Sandra?
Just my comment. Solutions, possible solutions. I mean, short-term CCTV in a tidied up tunnel. That might be something, but longer term, yes, above ground crossings are generally the personal security, the better thing. I mean, overpass, a structure is probably that's going to be an expensive thing to put in. But I mean, at grade solutions, and this would be Wakakotahi. I mean, there was that roundabout. But there are other things, if you see it, other things, that you can have signalised type crossings. That's a high-speed road, but I mean, you can reduce speed limits. And in Hamilton, in the last few years, and in Auckland too, there's raised platform type intersections, crossings on higher speed roads. They'd be put it that these sort of things are getting done nowadays. So there are solutions. It doesn't have to be a literal structure. There are ways of doing things. The next thing is to get the money. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, you guys should catch up for coffee over it.
I'm reminded of the residents of Pokirua Bay who forced Wakakotahi into dealing with their situation. And I wouldn't want to be accused of doing anything like that, but you know, why not? Yeah. You and I couldn't possibly comment.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Constellation.
It's a problem that needs solving. It can't go on any longer. We've had it for 60 years and it's going to stop. And the next one, which is a really easy one, deciduous leaves, the trees lose their leaves and they fall to the ground. And some people use them for mulch, but not a lot of people seem to know that. And so they get all over the roads there. I cannot understand why Taupō District Council does not have a leaf sweeper that can be put in place and gathered up to use leaves, not just for Turangi, but for all the deciduous trees in the district.
The leaves were transferred from one side of the road to the other.
Do you know what the problem is, Your Worship? Do you know all those beautiful Chinese poplars that are on State Highway 1? So we no sooner deal with the ones on Taupahi Road and everywhere else in town. But if you notice, they're just going yellow now and looking absolutely fabulous. And we no sooner got rid of this lot, and then they just cover the town, literally cover the town. I knew you were going to say that.
Trees are the problem, Sandra.
Trees are not a problem. Please, can we have a leaf?
In Canada, have you seen one of those?
We don't have the picker upper because we don't have any road maintenance equipment of our own. Our contractors do, and as I mentioned last week, there was a street sweeper sweeping the leaves in Turangi. So the question is, do we do that? We do that. If there's a question around the level of service, then we can pick that up. There's another forum to pick that up. I know there's also been questions around whether we accept leaves at the transfer station at no cost. I think we've spoken about that as well, that typically it opens, well, it's not typical, but from year to year, we open up the transfer station for green waste. Brent can talk about when that is. And this year, I believe we brought it forward based on request.
I hear what you're saying, Andrew, but I think what upsets most people is that none of these trees are actually on people's property. They are all either on State Highway 1. The ones on State Highway 1 actually are a nightmare. It's fabulous. It's down State Highway 47 as well. The Chinese poplars, they look beautiful at present. So we no sooner get rid of this leaf fall and then they cover the town. So a leaf sweeper, and I wouldn't call it road maintenance. I would call it accepting responsibility for our trees.
The leaf sweeper broke down though, it was doing a great job, wasn't it? And then it broke down. Is that what Eric said?
Yeah.
It stopped at a certain point and they didn't come back.
Okay. Is that your yeah, Councillors?
No, I haven't finished. No, that's number 2.
In response to the leaves though, in response to the leaves, I know of a few community gardens who gratefully accept leaves for composting. Thanks very much.
That was welcome to come and get them. I'm sure.
No, drop off only.
And there's one further point which is delicate, but I want to bring it up here because it was brought up at the Te Kapua Park steering group. The $5,000 which was donated in lieu of an unfortunate incident some many years ago now at Turangi. It is not the wish of Turangi people to have that money used in a playground. We do not think it's appropriate, and we would like to use it somewhere else. I suppose just at this point, perhaps suggestions from councillors might be a good idea that I could perhaps take back to that steering group, but we definitely do not want a plaque and we do not want anything really that sort of recognises that incident. It was a blot on our landscape, and to be honest with you, I do think it's fair enough that the town would like to move on from there.
Councillor Shepherd?
On what basis was the donation given? What was the wish of the family?
I'm sorry, I don't know. Councillor Rankin, do you know?
Because
So,
yeah,
I have been asked several times, they wanted it to be dedicated to whom?
in any way that is.
In any way that is seen. And look, it could be an art, some piece of art or something on the library, I don't know.
Where is the money set, Libby?
Through the chair, this one's been, as we heard yesterday, he's been floating around for a little while. And it's been a little bit tricky to get kind of one thing that everybody wants. One of the things that is currently being discussed is potentially, because it's something that isn't bringing up the bad memories of what happened, but it's something that kind of will unite the community. One of the ideas that's been suggested that we're currently looking at is actually a turtle. Now you may, some of you will know the importance of the turtle for Turangi, but growing up at that part of the lake, there was a concrete turtle in the wall. It's very important to the community, and it was unfortunately destroyed and ended up at the transfer station with its head not attached. And so we're currently looking at an opportunity to incorporate that, which will sound a bit absurd to those who won't understand the importance of this turtle, because that could be some feedback that has come through. So I don't know if that was resonating, but it doesn't. It'll bring people together. It'll be tactile, something for children to play on, and it's aligned with the age of the.
$5,000. So it's still got the money.
We've looked at take that to the should that go to the co-governance committee, do you think?
So through the chair, that's going to be at the co-governance committee next week. And also there was an earlier decision that had been made around the committee or the community board matching that funding as well. That gives us a little bit of leeway.
Thank you, Libby.
Just as a
That's right.
Cool. Thank you, Sandra.
That's all.
Oh, yes, on behalf of Mangakino, we want a mower. For the golf course. And in the submission report, the staff said, that's a decision for elected members. Sorry. Kirsty's not here, so I'm going to speak for her. Yeah. We need a mower.
Tell us a story.
Especially with revalves and that going through the roof, it's just some way of showing that. Put a basketball, get them a new mower and stuff.
Other than that, my old one, I'll buy a new one. I've got a ride on.
Right, you play golf, Libby.
Exactly.
You want a new mower?
Through the chair, so and others please feel free to jump in because I've got one aspect of this is I believe the course received a mower a couple of years ago, but it was second-hand. So now the mower has, I believe, reached an end of life, parts of it have. And AJ and the club had asked for $40,000-$50,000 to get a new one.
How much?
40 to 50 grand.
40.
What we had suggested to them was that we were pretty comfortable we could help them get the bulk of that funding through community grants and sponsorship. Last that we'd spoken, they were looking at about $18,000 that they had to hand, and that was, and I believe that actually been given some through the community grants as well. $4,000 on top of that. So instead of looking at just giving a lawnmower or giving funds, we had tried to go through the community because I don't believe that the whole golf course is council or I think the and again, please jump in, colleagues, but where we dispose of the water was behind because the grass goes faster because of the nutrients.
Does it?
I believe so. That was where the mower came from, but not every, I don't think we dispose on every single hole.
Yeah. And I think they might have quietly heard about Kinloch.
Yeah, so the motivation, the unfairness was because we provided.
Okay, so they've got 18,000.
Sorry. Well, I guess through the chair, there is an option for the community or for sponsorship to fund it, where they've kind of managed to get some of the funding, as far as I'm aware. But it's probably a decision for you whether you would want to fund more of that. But I would just be cautious around if you do want to fund the whole thing, that there's probably some money already sitting there.
Yeah, oh, good on them for going out and working in conjunction with you guys, getting some money, 18 grand by the sound of it.
What about funding the balance? Yeah, on acceptance of the quotes and all that sort of thing in conjunction with AJ and Prosperity. Sorry, Ken?
I was just wondering, given that it's a funding question at hand, whether that comes into play with our grants and partnerships policy around funding decisions being made through the annual plan and long-term plan, and that we would need to come up with some
Special reasons.
as to why that would be provided.
Have we just received an application from the golf club? They requested to the Rich Group. Yeah, I thought I remember that. I just wondered actually one of the golf club. Councillor Taylor.
No, I just suspect that this is a repeat of a conversation we had a couple of years ago. And the reason Mangakino got one was out of a sense of equity, because we gave one to Kinloch, because that's where all of the treated water discharge goes from the Kinloch wastewater treatment plant. Correct me if I've misinterpreted that. And it's because the grass grows really quickly.
Through the chair, Mangakino didn't get a mower, they got a blade.
Blade.
To go on the front.
And then run around the
An attachment, yes.
Okay. Is there an appetite there?
Okay, well, you tell Susie, Karen.
Well, you know, if they get one, I'm gonna need a leaf sweeper.
Make sure you order the right machine.
So I just wonder whether we, again, might separate this into two issues. One is, what's our obligation as someone, as a utility provider who's discharging treated effluent irrigated onto land? And what's our commercial agreement with the landowner or to do that? And if that includes providing them with some equipment to mow the grass, that's one issue. Then perhaps there's a separate community grant or community development or social angle to support, and that might be dealt with as a separate issue.
I'm sure we've got no absolute obligation, but you would be the expert on that.
Sounds like this will be dealt with outside of the annual plan process.
Yeah.
Agreed. I guess it's been a source of contention since you made your decision around Kinloch.
Yeah. So also through the chair, just suggestions, an Ambrose tournament with district councillors and the mayor involved. I'm pretty sure they could fundraise more than enough money for a lawnmower.
It's not a bad idea.
It's a great idea. Then we'll get down to Mangakino, have a great weekend and
Sponsor, swap prizes.
Yeah, exactly.
Not too many organisations come to us and say they've got half
Ambrose tournaments.
the money, fundraising, half the money. So is there an appetite to match fund it with possibly the tournament?
For your information, when I used to work up in Auckland City, Chamberlain Golf Course, land owned by the council, for many years they had regular annual no, it wasn't Ambrose, but council staff and council staff a whole golf day, and it was a whole day on the course, and it was sponsorship and trundlers going around, free alcohol drink, the whole thing. And the 19th hole.
We're trying to raise money.
And you are unlucky to walk away without a spot prize at the end of the night.
I wonder why Mr. Brown is so grumpy now.
Tournament at the end.
Mr. Brown is so grumpy because of your junkets and your playing. Anyway, I'd certainly like to help. Manga don't ask for much, do they? And I know the basketball court's on the go and that sort of thing, but the match fund, they've got 18K. I think, Libby, we say to them, hey, you got, through the help of you, we've got 18K by the sound of it. Let's go halves.
We haven't had communication for a little while, so we'd probably just, it might
Yeah,
be
she's
double
serious,
checking.
but they still request them.
Potentially double checking the cost of what they're looking for as well, because that may have gone up. We probably need to just put a little bit of scrutiny around that to clear, but we can continue supporting them as well. We did suggest a tournament It was not particularly well supported, that idea, but wonder if we throw some of those ideas in the mix.
People of the people all of the time, so I'm still in favour of the Amherst.
I'm just concerned we haven't heard from the golf club, even though we've heard it through the rep group. We haven't heard, if they were really keen, they should directly apply here. But having said that, see what AJ, what the latest state of the players. Okay, before we wait. Yeah. Councillor Taylor.
No disrespect, but this is not a annual plan discussion.
No,
For the record, golf is the stupidest game ever invented. However, if you wish to have a tournament, I will play.
Yeah, there you go.
Are you really good?
Embrace.
No, I'm not very good either, so I need my partner to be good.
Yeah, that's right. I support moving forward. You can.
Oh, no.
Roll it on. Come
All
on.
right, sorry, Kendall.
I was trying to say, if that concludes our discussion around capital
Thank you very much.